Merry Christmas and welcome to the December 9th, 2019 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If you would stand with us, please. Commissioner Marvin Whitworth will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Marvin.
Shall we bow? Our Holy Father, we're indeed grateful for the many blessings that you give us in life. For this day, we're so thankful, Father, for the blessings that we've had. Father, we thank you for this time of year when our thoughts turn to you. We pray that we can keep that spirit throughout the year. Father, be with us tonight as we deliberate matters that concern our county. May the decisions that we make be in accordance with your will and best for all involved in our county. We pray that you forgive us when we failed you, and we pray that you will protect us as we travel. In Christ's name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Call a roll, please, Gail.
Charlotte P. Chip Pinion. Craig Lynch. David Jones. Jim Averwater. Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush. Pattis Reed. Rhonda Allen. Jeff Phillips.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Gail. At this time, we need to approve the minutes for our November 12th meeting. I'll call on our Vice Chair, Mike Cush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those have been reviewed. They appear in order, so I would like to make a motion to accept those and turn those to the archive.
We have a motion and a second to approve our November 12th, 2019 meeting minutes. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. And motion carries. Thank you. We have no items withdrawn or deferred tonight, so we're ready to go. Item 6 begins with a waiver request. 6A, Rhonda Cossey is requesting a waiver for an off-site soils easement from property located at 9456 Pruitt Road. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and good evening, Commission members. Our first item, as was stated, is for a waiver request for property located along Pruitt Road. The applicant wishes to subdivide the two lots in order to make Lot 2 larger. There is a concept plan that is attached with your agenda packets. There is an existing house on Lot 1. Should the lot be subdivided as shown on the concept plan, the septic area for Lot 1 would be on Lot 2. Again, there is a copy on your iPads. Mike's going to bring it up here on the big screen. There we go. So you can kind of see where they've kind of drawn just kind of sketched in a red line. It's kind of how they're thinking about how they want to subdivide the property. As you can see, the soils area, both lots have a soil area, but if they divide it the way they want to, then both soils area would be on the other lot, Lot 2. So with that, are the applicants present? Okay, very good. The applicants are present. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Staff have a recommendation?
We don't really have strong feelings one way or the other about it. If it gets approved, it's fine.
Doug, did you say there is a current house there?
On Lot 1, that's correct. Yeah, Mike's bringing up the GIS so you can see what it looks like currently. Yes, sir. Yeah, we have seen these type of situations before. This is, as I was explained to me, is for a family member as well. So. Mm-hmm.
My concern is not for the family member now, but what's going to happen 50 years from now. If those family members are no longer there, will these people in both lots be amenable to having your sewage on my side of the fence?
Right. Yes, sir. What'll have to happen if this is approved, of course, they'll still have to do a subdivision plat in order to memorialize this, to formalize it, if you will. So the easements will be shown on the plat, and they'll be part of the plat and the deeds of each one. So moving forward, at some point, and I've had that conversation with people too, at some point, this may be family right now, but at some point, like you said, 50, 100 years down the road, it's not going to be. But with it formalized on the plat and in the deeds, they should always, whoever buys the property should always know that that exists in that fashion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the waiver request for an offside soils easement for Rhonda Kelsey. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to
Mr. Chairman,
approve?
I have a question.
Me?
So, Doug, I'm trying to see on the plat that's on our iPad where the red line is. Looks like they're creating a flag lot. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's ultimately what they would be doing.
And so is the entire backside, is it going to go the width of both lots?
Well, the entire backside, where that little flag area is, that would be Lot 1, and then Lot 2 would be the remainder of that.
Yeah, that's, I can't see where the red line is.
Can you draw it on there? Michael will kind of show you. Yeah, right.
Okay, so right now, both lots, as they are, have independent soil sites?
Correct.
And so what is gained by this? I'm just trying to figure out
Well,
why it's needed.
when I spoke with the applicant, and she may be in a position to better explain this than I am, but she said this is the way that they wanted to subdivide it. So, I'd ask the same question, why do that when you've got, approved soil sites on both lots already? So, but again, the applicant is present. If you wanted to ask them of that question of them, they'd probably be able to give you a better explanation.
I would like to know because, it looks like it's ideal the way it is now. So I'm just trying to understand what's gained necessarily by creating that flag lot and then shifting that soil site. Because whenever you can have two fully independent sites, that seems like the better solution, and that's what we have. So I'm just curious as to why we would change that.
Would like for the applicant to come up. Is Ms. Kelsey here? Did you understand? Yes. Do you understand the question?
I do, yes, we do. So where it stands, she's the property owner. My husband is her son, and they would like to pass this property to us. But, the land is not paid off yet, the house isn't paid off yet, and we're land searching, and so ideally it would be passed to us now. However, we don't want two residents. So by sectioning around the home, were you the one that had, okay. By sectioning around the home, it is beneficial because we don't want that on our finances or liabilities to have two homes. The other thing is the width of the road frontage on those properties are very narrow. And so unfortunately, the width for one of the properties is not wide enough for the home. So it needs to kind of bump over anyway, and as it is, we want livestock and animals, so we want the majority of the acreage, and they don't want to maintain it anyway. So the back property is actually going eventually to the other son, who we have requested first right of refusal. We would like to own it as well, so we can complete that and be the forever home for us. And so ideally, we do want the entire tract in the future. Also, the soil sites are actually expired. They're not good anymore. Those are old soil sites. So we haven't even, that's coming tomorrow actually. So we are not sure that the soil is still good in those areas. But there has been some regulation changes where now you have to have two per home. So we're concerned too, is there going to be enough soil if we keep things how it is, for our home, because their home is a 3-bedroom and we're hoping to build a 4. So that's just a lot of good soil needed in a very rocky area. So we're, at this point not wanting to waste our money and time getting soil work done if you guys won't even approve the lines being moved. So it's just kind of complicated, but.
So we're just trying to go ahead and, if it's possible, to work it out where it's just gonna stay with the family, and give my oldest son his part now, them, and then eventually down the road when we pass, then the other part will be to our other son.
Any other questions? Thank you. We do have a motion and a second to approve. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B, these are items submitted for final plat approval. 6B1, 19-2077, Rick Zachary subdivision of Lot 3, one lot on 5.13 acres zoned RL, located off Carlton Road. Richard Zachary is the applicant. This includes a waiver to the fire hydrant requirements. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. As you stated, this property, is located along Carlton Road. The applicant is proposing to do a couple things here. You can see on the plat, and this looks a little different than some plats we see, and I'll get to that here in a second. But you can see at lots 2 and 3, those exist today. They're combining those into one lot of record, which would be about 24.5 acres. By doing that, they're also wanting to carve off Lot 3A. Now, that is a new lot. So the big reason that is coming before you today, the reason that's coming before you today has to do with the fact that this would require a fire hydrant waiver. As you can see, this is accessed off of a private easement. It's an existing easement. The owner of the property owns all of this along with that easement. So this would be outside of 1,000 feet of a hydrant, even if they put a hydrant right there where that easement hits Carlton Road. It's just too far away. So with that, the plat is actually, as far as our comments are concerned, they have addressed our comments. That plat, like I said, looks a little bit different than you would normally see. I spoke with the survey company just a little earlier today, and they were making some of the changes, and they were highlighting the changes and showing how the changes were made based on our comments. So when the copy, if this gets approved, when the copy comes in to be recorded, a lot of those highlighting and things won't be on the plat. So that's why that looked a little odd. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. The plat itself appears to be in good order with the exception of that waiver request.
Questions for staff?
Hydrant, and will it?
Yeah, there is a, Mike is kind of circling it right there on the map, corner of Link and Panther Creek Road. So it's a little ways away. Like I said, it wouldn't matter even if they put one there. It still wouldn't meet our regulations. They would still have to ask for a waiver. There is a little one. There is a little, Mike's pointing out one a little further down Carlton Road, which is actually a little closer than the one on Link.
Is staff okay with this?
Yes. We don't have, sorry?
Are the staff okay with what you've seen here?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Chairman, I make the motion to approve with staff comments.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 19-2077 for Rick Zachary subdivision of Lot 3. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B2, item number 19-2079, South Haven, Section 6. 35 lots on 18.38 acres zoned PUD located off Ocala Road. South Haven Development Group is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This section of South Haven, as you stated, will be comprised of about 35 building lots. Pretty much our comments that we had for Section 6 have been addressed. I will point out one thing. This was something that we worked with the applicant on. You can see what Mike is highlighting there on the screen. That is an access easement to property owned by Consolidated Utility District. That'll be part of the STEP system. When we first saw this plat, if this plat is recorded, that area becomes a landlocked tract of land. Where the STEP system is. Now, the CUD, along with their design engineer, are in the process of getting ready to submit a re-subdivision plat for all of CUD's property. They're making it one lot of record. So in that sense, it wouldn't be landlocked anymore. However, we did still want to see a 20-foot access easement to that portion of the property because there is a creek that runs right through, as Mike is highlighting there, that runs through the where CUD's lot is. We didn't want to see people crossing over the creek. That's a water quality buffer area, so we didn't want any disturbance in that area. So they agreed and put a 20-foot access easement there, so they can access it either from the western side of the subdivision or from here in Section 6, where they could get to this other part right here that Mike's highlighting. So with that, the rest of our comments have been addressed, and that was really the biggest outstanding issue we had. Since that's been addressed, we'd recommend approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Why are lots 111 and 112 flagged as critical lots?
That is because of the steepness of the slopes behind it. They essentially had to build up Rusty Blackbird Court and the lots around it. This is step lots here, and they couldn't bring that elevation up. So when they brought the lots and the roads up, that left a steep slope along here, and they didn't want to trim out the building setback line. So I said, well, that's fine, but you're going to have to make that a critical lot. So we want to see an individual lot grading plan, essentially, for it.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve with staff comments.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 19-2079, South Haven, Section 6. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B3, 19-2080, Watercrest Section 1, 3 lots on 8.04 acres, zoned PUD, located along Ocala Road and Old Shores Road. Amaville Acquisition is the applicant. This also includes off-site soil waiver and waivers for an unbuildable lot. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The segment of Ocala Road, as you see on this plat, was constructed as part of the South Haven subdivision approval, that PUD, that the portion of which we just saw a plat for, and we'll see another one here in just a couple minutes. The County Road Board will need to consider a couple things. First of all, eventually accepting this portion of Ocala Road as a county road, but also as part of that, abandoning Old Shores Road, those portions there. That was something that when discussions were underway with TDOT on this, they agreed to the connection to extend Ocala Road straight out, but they wanted to see, kind of like where Mike is highlighting there on the screen, they wanted to see portions of that to be abandoned so that there weren't two connections there back to Almaville Road. I mean, this portion of Old Shores Road that Mike was showing, the applicants own pretty much all that land to the south of Ocala, but to the other side of Ocala, there are still a couple of properties that would need access to that, so obviously we wouldn't close it off so that they couldn't have access back to Old Shores Road. Lot 2A, as you can see on the plat, and Mike will bring that back up, Lot 2A, as you see, is a non-buildable lot. It's being proposed to be used for the soils for Lot 2B, which is located across the street on the south side of Ocala Road. That is something that will also have to be approved by the Road Board and the County Highway Department in order for that to actually happen. You'll see that Lot 2A is a non-buildable lot. You'll also see Lot 3 kind of toward the bottom of the screen there. When I originally submitted the plat, Lot 3 was just labeled as a remainder portion of land. However, it was less than 5 acres, so we told them that it needed to have a lot number. So they're showing that really is just it's leftover land. It's non-buildable at this point. If they ever wanted to come back and do some soil analysis on that to determine whether or not as something could be supported on that, then they would just have to bring back an amendment plat to show the soils on that. But as of right now, it would just be a non-buildable lot. So with that, our comments have been addressed. Again, those issues with the County Highway Department and the Road Board are still outstanding, but we'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Doug, would that be gravity flow from 2B to 2A for the, are they going to use 2A for their soils?
Yes, sir. They would use 2A as soils for 2B.
Got to be pumped or what?
Don't know if it's going to be pumped or not, but the issue was with the highway department. They typically don't want a private sewer service or utility line in a public right-of-way, because when they call the Tennessee One call to mark the underground utilities, they won't mark that, and they could potentially dig through that. So they're, like Doug said, they're working with the design engineer to come up with an encased utility line that could protect the utility line and maybe have markers on either side. So they're still in the works with that. So haven't heard the final outcome of that.
Do we have that? We got that anywhere? Do we have this going under a road?
I'm not aware of any. We were talking about it for the Rockville Convenience Center, moving to one side to the other, but I haven't seen one in place.
So County Road Board will frown upon this?
Most likely.
That's what I think.
Most likely. Yeah. So, you know, there are several things that this, you know, relies on. The dedication, the abandonment of the right-of-way, the Old Shores right-of-way. What they told us is that they have to do a waiver of damages. Every property owner that abuts that right-of-way has to sign this waiver of damages saying, if you take my road away, I'm not going to sue you, essentially. But, you know, they've addressed everything we've asked them to do. We still just rely on the Highway Department's approval.
What is the plan for 2B? Because on this plan it says...
Yes.
These are commercial lots. Lot 1 would be something like a gas station, convenience market, maybe Dollar General, something like that. I'm trying to remember the pattern book for 2B. There were mini storage in the area. I want to say that was for across the street, but it was good. This was the commercial portion of the planned development for Watercrest.
One side was going to be a Dollar General, one side was going to be a gas station. So do they need an off-site waiver request? Oh, is it? Okay. Okay.
I know currently you said that 3 is a non-buildable lot, but that a soils assessment could be done in the future. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
So does it need access? Because I'm not seeing access for...
I think...
They'll have frontage. It'll be combined with this remaining parcel on the other side of the former Old Shores.
Right.
That has frontage on Ocala now.
It would not become landlocked. You know, like I said, at some point that'll all be dedicated to the whole development anyway. So,
our GIS showed it as one parcel, but apparently there was some discrepancy in deeds or something like that. Oh, there's Mr. Brooks. He might have some
Superintendent Brooks.
talking bad about him and didn't
Has
even know
that
he was here.
been zone commercial already?
It's all part of a planned unit development. It's a PUD. But like I said, this part was to be commercial, so it was the commercial portion of that.
Good evening, everyone. I think it's worth noting that I have had conversations with the design team at SEC. They have been into the office and tried to address the concerns. Michael's exactly right. Private utilities and the public right-of-way, we got an opinion from our county, I got an opinion from our county attorney some years ago about that. And the concern is that, the primary concern is it doesn't show up on an 811 call before you dig, you know. So what I've asked them to do, and they are doing that now currently, I haven't seen it yet, but I know they're going to do it. They're going to design they're going to come up with a drawing and a design to show a steel casement with a steel sleeve under the road that extends beyond the right-of-way on both sides, so that where the steel sleeve ends is actually on private property, is not on county property. So I think that they can do that, and I think that they can do that in a manner that would address our concerns, and I know it would address mine. So, and they have been working to that end. They have been in my office working to that end, so I thought I should mention that since it's come up. It should be deep enough, and it will be pumped, because my understanding is they're doing like a little step system on that property on I guess it's on 2B right there. It's a little step system that's just for that, whatever that commercial development's going to be right there. So it will be pumped across, it won't be gravity. There were some more conversations had about it today, but it is an ongoing conversation. I feel like they will be able to get us a comfort level that we can accept. I just thought I should point that out.
Doug, you okay with this? I mean,
I am.
County Highway Department, they're going.
Right, we won't sign the plat until we know that they've met the concerns of Mr. Brooks in the Highway Department and the Road Board. So.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Subject to staff comments.
Motion and a second to approve item 19-2080, Watercrest Section 1, with staff comments. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Is there any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B4, 19-2081, Clearview Acres, Section 1, Phase 2, 10 lots on 1.93 acres, Zone PUD, located along Blue Ash Way. 3BC is the applicant. Sounds like a Star Wars movie, Doug.
Actually, it sounds like my church. Third Baptist Church, that's what we call ourselves, 3BC. This particular section of Clearview, as you stated, will be comprised of 10 lots. It's the remainder of Section 1. Our comments have been addressed. One of the issues we did have with it was a temporary turnaround needed to be established. You can see that on the plat, they do have a temporary turnaround easement that they do have recorded. So that met our concerns. So we were fine with that. Beyond that, the only thing that they need to make sure they do before it's recorded, and they have acknowledged this, is to show the fire hydrant placements on the plat. Probably just be the one, but as of right now, they're not shown. But before it's recorded, we'll make sure it's on there. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
And if I could add something, this could have been platted, could have been platted with Section 1, Phase 1 of Clearview. The problem was they could not build a temporary turnaround here because they had an electric pole in this area here and then a concrete washout over here. So they said, well, we'll just wait until we can get this property under contract and we can put a temporary turnaround on this side.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve final plat with staff comments.
We have a motion. And a second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item number 19-2081, Clearview Acres, Section 1, Phase 2. Other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. 6B5, 19-2083, South Haven, Section 8, 44 lots on 12.83 acres, zoned PUD, located off Ocala Road. South Haven Development Group is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just realized on the iPads, for some reason, after Clearview Acres, I don't know how this happened, but South Haven 8's not in there. I must have thought I had it done and forgot to put it in there, so I apologize for that. If I had to forget one, what's that? Right, it's not on the, right. So for whatever reason, I'm not sure what happened there. I apologize. But if I had to miss one, this probably was a good one to miss just because they met all of our conditions. This plat is in good order. This is just another section of South Haven over there off of Ocala Road. Mike's kind of pointing out where it is. It's kind of adjacent to Section 6 that we considered just a little earlier on the agenda. After our initial round of comments, we only had one comment left. That was just a minor clarification on one of their notes regarding the water quality buffer. They have addressed that, and we would recommend approval. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for staff? Thank you, Ms. P. And a second. We have a motion to approve and a second. Mr. Whitworth. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Is there any opposition? That motion to approve carries. Thank you. At this time, I need a motion to suspend the rules to add an item or two under this final plat approval section. I have a motion to suspend the rules and a second to add items. Any other questions on that? All those in favor of that motion to suspend the rules, please say aye. Opposition, motion to suspend the rules carries. Doug?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The two plats, we have two final plats for your consideration tonight under the suspension of the rules. Both of these plats have been previously approved. They have just went outside of their expiration date. You'll recall a little earlier this year we changed the subdivision regulations to change that period from 6 months to a year. Unfortunately, these two have been outstanding for going on about a year and a half, 2 years, so it wouldn't even have mattered that we did that. The first is for Forest Ridge Section 3, Phase 3. Nothing has changed on this plat. This plat is actually in good order. It's ready to be recorded now. We've received our letter of credit. Our inspectors have been out there and looked at it, said everything's in good shape. They're just waiting on the recorded plat. So with that, I'd recommend approval of this.
We have a motion and a second to approve Forest Ridge Section 3, Phase 3. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? That motion to approve carries. Thank you. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The second is for Terry Stacy. This is a piece of property that is located along Rock Springs Midland Road. You can see that it's a larger piece of property, about 13, 14 acres or so, and they are splitting off Lot 1, which is a little bit over an acre, about an acre and a half. Normally, we wouldn't have an issue with this, but the reason it's being brought before you is because of an off-site soil easement. You can kind of see it going way into the back. Right there is where the easement was. This was previously approved as well by the Planning Commission due to that waiver. Again, it's just outside of its its approval window by about the same amount as the last plat we looked at. Nothing has changed. The applicants actually came up to our office the other day to have it recorded. That's when we discovered it had expired, so we told them we'd go ahead and get it on tonight's agenda. So with that, again, we'd recommend approval.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve Terry Stacy subdivided lot and also off-site soils. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of that motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition to that? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. On your agenda, the next item is listed as 6C, and I think it should actually be 6D. These are items that are rezoning requests that are scheduled for public hearings. And let me go ahead and make an announcement that to everyone that's here to speak, our rules and guidelines are 3 minutes.
Sure. We have the site plan still on here.
Well, that's because I wrote a bunch of stuff down at the bottom. All of you guys out there, never mind what I just said. Item 6C, we have one item that's submitted for site plan approval, 6C1. The item number is 19-3050, Science Hill Church of Christ, new construction of 11,556 square foot community assembly facility with associated parking on 12.8 acres zoned RM located along John Bragg Highway. Science Hill Church of Christ is the applicant. How's that, Doug?
Perfect. Thank you, sir. The Board of Zoning Appeals did grant a special exception for a medium community assembly church use on this property. We did have some concerns regarding the proposed septic system. Most of those concerns appear to have been addressed. As far as just from a planning and zoning standpoint, our comments have been addressed. This is a pretty good set of plans, and we've been pretty happy with it. Mike has a few items that he wants to talk about from a drainage and stormwater standpoint. But again, overall, we're happy with the plans, just some tweaks we think need to be made. But I'll turn it over to Mike to let him discuss.
Right. And like Doug said, all in all, it's a good set of plans. Just needs some minor tweaking revisions. One thing that we did look at was they're showing a proposed septic system soil site behind the proposed church, but it has proposed grades over the top of it with about 1.5 feet of fill. Typically, you don't want any fill material placed on top of your septic soils system. They claim they've talked with TDEC, and TDEC was okay with it after it's installed, but I'll leave that between TDEC and the applicant. And other minor revisions, just tweaking a little bit on the pond, adding a few erosion control measures, and let's see, details for the pond, the berm, some spot shot grades, and just some minor housekeeping items. This would be pre-con ready, so it's close to being what we need. It's just some minor tweaking.
Staff okay with the plan?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With the exception of the minor tweaking?
A few minor punch ticket items. This is a TVA substation back here. This is the property up front here. It's just a little bit west of Coleman Road off of John Bragg. This is the subject property here.
We have a motion and a second to approve site plan approval for Science Hill Church of Christ. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to approve carries. Now we're ready for 6D. Thank you. These are items that are rezoning requests that are scheduled for public hearings. And I see a lot of folks here. That means that probably there's going to be a number of folks that want to speak. Our rules are 3 minutes. We have 3 agenda items to get through tonight, so we would ask that you hold those comments to 3 minutes to allow us enough time tonight to get through our agenda. Also like to inform everyone that all of these rezoning requests will be heard before the full Rutherford County Commission on Thursday, January the 16th, 2020, right here in this same room, and they will make the final decision on the rezoning. This body is a recommending body. The County Commission makes the final decision. Okay, 6D, rezoning requests that are scheduled for public hearing. 6D1, item number 19-A022, Edward Ellsworth, location 5327 Elam Road. Commission district is 18. The county commissioner is Alan McAdoo. Size of the site is 17.15 acres. The tax map is 135. The existing zoning is RM, residential medium density. Proposed zoning is for CS, which is commercial services. Doug.
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, the applicant would like to zone this property commercial services in order to construct a self-storage facility on the property. Information provided by the applicant, which is attached with your iPads on your agenda materials, states that there will be a total of 420 units, storage units, including carports, provisions for boats, and other recreational vehicles. Now, understand that's just a conceptual drawing that is in your application materials on your iPads. They would have to do a full-blown site plan provided this gets approved, even before they determine how many units they could ever get out of that. The applicant's materials do not specify as to whether there'll be an office or a manager's apartment on site, although that's not necessarily something we need to know now for rezoning. Just wanted to point that to your attention. The applicant, again, has included a concept plan. This is not a plan unit development, as you're aware, so the applicant is not bound by what is shown on the concept plan. Something else to consider is that self-storage facilities are only allowed by special exception by the Board of Zoning Appeals in the CS zone, so it's not a use that's allowed by right. And for those in the audience, in other words, even if this were to be approved, if this makes it through the rezoning process, if they wanted to do a self-storage facility, they would have to have another public hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals for the specific use of a self-storage facility. And again, even though the applicant has stated his intent to construct a self-storage facility on this property, should this application be approved, he could construct whatever uses are allowed in this zoning district, which are outlined in our zoning ordinance. Site plans would also have to be submitted and approved by either Planning Commission or staff, depending on the size, should this be approved. Access to the property is shown along Elam Road. As you see, this property is adjacent to I-24. However, there is no access, of course, there's no exit onto I-24 at that point, nor is there any planned in the county's long-range transportation plan. Staff did, when we met with the applicant on this, you can see that the access to the property kind of comes off of Elam Road and takes a really sharp loop onto the property. Staff did discuss their concerns with that alignment with the applicant and discussed that there had to be some sort of revised alignment that way that is currently, and Mike's got it up on the screen there, that for some kind of a commercial use, that alignment just simply is not going to be adequate. There's no way they could make that work. So that is something, if this is approved, that they'll have to kind of work through before we would approve any kind of a site plan for that. Landscaping, if this were approved, it would have to put a type 2 buffer against any residentially zoned property. You can count existing plantings toward the buffering requirements, but a landscape plan, of course, would have to be submitted to staff for us to verify that the conditions for a type 2 buffer had been met. Also, the zoning ordinance does include performance standards for noise, dust, and other hazardous materials, things like that, that have any commercial or industrial use has to be able to meet. Looking at this, it's not likely this property or others in the immediate vicinity will ever develop in a residential manner due to the proximity to I-24. There is already non-residentially zoned property across the interstate that has been annexed into the city of Murfreesboro. Self-storage facilities generally do not create the same traffic demands as certain retail uses. However, that all being said, this is on the west side of I-24, and this would be the only and first commercial use approved for I-24, or on the west side of I-24, should this application be approved. So staff kind of had mixed emotions on this. You notice we didn't actually make a recommendation up or down on this. We remained neutral because we can see both sides of this one. I have received some phone calls on this. There have been people who have called our office that have been concerned about especially on the west side of I-24 Elam Road. As you can see, it's very large tracks, open, very rural, more of a farming type nature in that area. So we have received several phone calls about that, about concerns regarding the zoning of the property. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions before the public hearing or after it.
Any questions for staff at this time? The public hearing hasn't opened up yet. Is the applicant available? Please come forward. Get with you in a minute.
Chairman Phillips, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. And as Doug mentioned, the intention by our client is to develop self-storage out in this area. Right now, he owns the piece of property. He cited it because he wanted to have some access, or some visual access from Interstate 24. He's kind of anticipating a lot of growth in that area, as we're seeing with a lot of residential development. So really the goal is to get ahead of that with some storage out in that area. As Doug mentioned, the access is one of the bigger challenges on the side because of that kind of switchback turn. He's communicated with the adjacent neighbor. The adjacent neighbor is running kind of an auto repair or small engine repair kind of business. So that neighbor is very open to kind of creating a shared access type of agreement for him to have a little bit more room to turn a vehicle into that particular site. As Doug mentioned, it's really not a site that'll be used for any kind of residential development, so it's really a matter of what kind of commercial development would be fitting for that location. The site's long and narrow and kind of straddles right along the interstate. So the anticipation from the master plan is to have the fortress style self-storage with the majority of the wall up against the interstate to kind of create a little bit of a visual barrier from the interstate. And as far as that's concerned, he would like to, eventually build it out over time. But the biggest question we had originally meeting with the planning staff was whether we could make that turn work off of Elam Road. And he feels like, based on his conversations with that neighbor, it'd be a shared driveway access point, and that was critical. So I'm available for any questions you may have right now. I would definitely like to respond to anything we may get from the public hearing, if that would be okay.
Any questions of the applicant at this time? Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, from the standpoint of would it create a better access point to access that property, it would. Now, again, we would have to look at, the actual design of it should this be approved. I mean, there'd be several things we'd have to look at as far as, the size and if there is any angle to it or anything like that. But, I mean, it can work, and, we have seen other situations. I think of one off of Sulphur Springs Road, down from the Dollar General near 840 in that area, where there was a site plan that was approved for a gas station, and there was a commercial property next door, and they worked out an agreement to have a shared access, even though the other side hadn't developed yet. So it's something that we would encourage, just in general, not necessarily for this parcel, but just in general.
Plus, it had to be legal documents. Legal documents where they
Yes,
they
absolutely.
use
Yeah, it would have to be
shared.
shown on legal documents, plats, whatnot. Yes, sir.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing open for item number 19-A022, Edward Ellsworth. You're up. If you would, give her your name and address. if you would, repeat your name. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, Dale Bonifant. I own the land. It's existing where Mr. Elworth is going to put that. My shops will meet 16 foot on the back side of that place. We did talk about, he asked me something about a driveway, sharing driveway. I didn't agree to it. I said, we'll talk, we'll get together. So I called him back, I think it was last week. He never did call me back. So as of now, there's no agreement on a shared driveway, and that's the only entrance he has going in there is what I've got. And I go pretty much all the way to the road there. So it's going to take out his pre-existing driveway. But that, and if he does it, he needs to do a buffering, like you said, and maybe privacy fence or something between my place and his place, and any blasting that they'd be responsible for if they like mess up my foundation, because there is a lot of rock over there.
You opposed to it?
For it or against it. You know, me running the business, it would be like fire against fire, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
I'm not against it, I'm not opposed to it, but he brought it up, but there was technically no discussions about it other than that. He didn't come forward. That was it, and he was gone. So as it stands now, no, there's no easement there yet.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? If you would, go ahead and repeat your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Peggy Maples. I live at 5560 Elam Road.
And I'm Angie Clino. I'm at 5942 West Gum Road. I have the blueberry patch. And we thank you for letting us talk with you about this. I've asked Peggy to present the majority, and then I'll have just a very brief thing to say.
I had a phone call, a lot of the community that could not be here. I'm speaking on the behalf of the Buchanan Community Awareness. A lot of us on here, we are for our community and the safety of our community and crime in our community. We're a very small community of 202 homes currently out there. Beautiful community. So our concerns with this development is crime, what's going to bring in. You know, if you bring one, you're going to bring more in. Two, the roads. We have a lot of traffic out there, okay? When the interstate, if there's an accident out there, where do they go? Elam Road. And they don't do the speed limit. We're talking 60 to 70 miles per hour. And I can tell you right now firsthand, I've called many times to our local sheriff's department. And you and I both know there's no budget in our sheriff's department. We have 7 officers per shift. And they cannot get out there. And our fire department, our local fire department that's on Elam Road, it is not manned. It's not in the budget. Our local fire department, if there were a burn or a blast or a possible, when these self-storage units are built, if there's meth or any other drug activity, you and I both know we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And the closest fire department is Barfield. We're talking a 7 to 8 minute commute. So at this point, we're talking about crime, and we don't want our community bothered with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a part of this community, and Peggy presented our concerns beautifully. The crime, the traffic, the fire. We would ask you to very carefully consider this for us and our community.
Hi, my name is Kyle Brewington. I live at 5602 Elam Road. I've been there 25 years. Over that 25 years, we've seen a lot of changes. There's been a lot of growth. Since they put in Joe B, we get a lot of traffic exiting 24 and also off of Joe B. Jackson. And like Peggy said, our speed limit in our area is 40 miles an hour, which is, to me, 10 miles an hour too fast going through residential. And they fly down there 50, 60 miles an hour. There's been animals hit and killed there on Elam Road. Luckily, we haven't had any people hit yet. But the thing is, to change a residential area to a commercial with the purpose of putting in storage units, right now there are 2 large storage units on either side of I-24 at Church Street, and they're still never full. But they have access, easy access in and out. Now, putting a storage unit on Elam Road there, like you said, first of all, easement getting in and out. Elam Road is a narrow road. Now we have not only more traffic with cars, we have dump trucks coming up and down there all day long. We have semis come through there, which they should not be doing, but they do. If a storage unit is in there, it's going to create more and more traffic. You're going to have traffic going there basically 24 hours a day, because most storage units have access 24 hours. If you got a storage unit, you put your card in or hit the code, and in you go. We do not need this, and I would hope that y'all would see our point of view. I've talked to a number of people on our road there, and a lot of them are working, and they have children all to take care of, and the people that I have talked to expressed the same feelings as I have. We really don't need that. We don't need commercial out there. It's a residential area. It's a community. It's families. Like I said, I've been there on Elam Road for 25 years, and we've got some pretty nice people out there, and we have seen things come up over the past year or two. A lot of shady characters coming through there, and I just feel myself, along with the other people on Elam Road there, that a storage unit there is just going to give too much access to, let's say somebody breaks into your house and you live on Elam Road. Bang, all they got to do is go right down the street and hide their stuff in their storage unit. You don't know. But anyway, like I said, we would really like for you all to think long and hard about this, about changing the zoning, but like I said, most people I have talked to on Elam Road do not want this. So I would hope that y'all would consider our feelings about this. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to make it real short. I agree with all these comments these people are making as far as the potential of bad things that happened at that site. But one of the things they haven't touched on that I'm concerned with is property value. You put that out there, our property value is going to be hurt. Just because people think, oh, I don't want to live there, but all the people are going to be accessing this site, and then who knows what kind of people they are. But on top of that, if you don't know the area very well, Elam Road, I live at 5623. I'm actually across the road from Mr. Brewington. During a really heavy rain, the Elam Road to the west of that site floods out frequently, and they close it down. So that would increase all the traffic coming in from Manchester Pike from the east. It goes right through right past our properties. And we don't need that. We bought out there because it was rural, it was quiet, and my wife and I just retired. We're looking forward to our golden years out there, and I don't want to get involved with any urban creep. That happened to my folks out in California. They lived in a little place out in the high desert away from town, and within 5 years, the town was on top of them. I don't want to have that happen here. So, I'm putting in my 2 bits for being opposed to it, and I hope you see my point. It's got more negative impact for the community than benefit, as far as I'm concerned. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this zoning request? Final call. I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners?
Chairman, I got a question. If this is changed to commercial, will a storage unit be the only thing that could be put there, or is that opening it up to anything they might decide rather than a storage unit that would fit within the category of what that would include?
Yes, sir. The commercial services zone, if this is rezoned, that would not be the only use that could be there, possibly. Yeah, there'd be several. Commercial service, we have 3 different commercial zoning classifications. Commercial neighborhood, which is the most restrictive. Commercial services is kind of in the middle. Commercial general is more wide open. So you couldn't see, on this property, you couldn't see anything like a car dealership or something like that in commercial services. But you could see, retail, restaurants, convenience mart. I mean, it's pretty, as far as the retail type uses, it's fairly wide open in that regard. So, but to answer your question, no, it would not be the only use.
Doug, it says it's in the general urban character area in the comprehensive.
Right. When we looked at when we did the comprehensive plan a few years ago, we looked at how the county was structured. Areas that were in close proximity to the city limits were designated as general urban, meaning that in the future, if they were to be developed, we would anticipate them being developed in a more intense fashion just because they're closer to the existing city limits, probably closer to infrastructure that would be needed to support that. The next level down would be the suburban belt, which is typically where we see a lot of our subdivisions, really, the suburban belt area, as well as the general urban area. Now, that being said, and this is a discussion we had during the comprehensive plan approval process, is that you may have a piece of property that may be in a specific area identified as general urban, or maybe one of the growth corridors or something like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single property is going to develop in that manner, or that infrastructure exists at the time when an application is made that would support that kind of development. So there is a timing aspect involved as well. But general urban is generally, it's more intense. It's anticipated to be more intense, up to 10 units an acre, I believe, with 10 units an acre for residential development, 0.9 FAR, which stands for floor area ratio, which is basically the amount of square footage versus the square footage of the lot. So that's a ratio. It's fairly intense. Basically, you can have pretty much the same amount of square footage in a commercial development as you could as there is square footage on your lot. That's what FAR, floor area ratio. It's your floor area to the area of the lot is what the ratio is. Did that help answer your question? Okay.
Doug, you mentioned under staff comments that this piece of property in all probability, will never be developed from a residential perspective because of its proximity to the interstate.
Correct.
If it's not developed from a residential perspective and we don't rezone this, what good is that piece of property?
Well, it's currently zoned residential medium density, and it can continue to be used as residentially zoned property. Again, that kind of goes back to the whole, is the infrastructure present to accommodate a larger commercial type development? Maybe it isn't today, maybe it will be in 5-10 years. Maybe you'll feel that it is today. I mean, that's really a call that you would have to make, and then ultimately the Board of Commissioners would make that final decision. But that being said, like I said, there is an existing structure on the property already. It can continue to be used residentially. It just may be an issue that you may feel that maybe at this point it's just not the right timing for something like that.
Very good. So. Thank you.
The condition of Elam Road right there. I'm not familiar with this.
Well, as in our staff report, you know, it's a 2-lane road. Actually, sorry, let me back up here just a couple of slides. Excuse me just a second. It's a 2-lane county road. It's approximately 40 feet in width, right-of-way width, according to the Rutherford County Road Book. Our long-term transportation plan does not show any proposed improvements on this section of Elam Road. Excuse me. TDOT does have some traffic counts on the other side of I-24, about a half a mile down the road. It does show a traffic count, a daily count of 482 vehicles a day as of 2018, which is down somewhat from 2017, which was 613, and in 2016 was 605. So I'm not sure why the decrease. But, you know, as far as, I mean, it's not a, you know, it's not, obviously it's not going to be a heavily traveled road like a South Church Street, Shelbyville Highway or something like that, but it is a maintained county road, paved. Now you can see, looking at it, those pictures that Mike has, right in that area, you don't see much of any shoulder on that, so.
Mike, from an engineering standpoint, could you address any sightlines issues with from the overpass at I-24 and where a possible driveway may be, assuming that the driveway has to stay on this property rather than encroach over onto the neighbors with an easement?
Right. Well, that's essentially what we told him when we met with him before he submitted his package, that we didn't feel that moving trucks, moving vans could make that hairpin turn to get around the guardrail that goes up over the ramp, that he would need a more of a gentle movement through the property. So I think that's his biggest hurdle as far as traffic. The road itself is, you know, average county road. I'm not sure of the width, but this imagery is from 2013, so it's a little dated, but it's probably not much different from this.
Okay, my concern was that rise right there when the overpass comes over the interstate, cars approaching from the direction you are looking now.
Yes.
Towards this property, thinking about a truck or trailer pulling out of this property.
Yes.
Making a left turn. Somebody has sufficient time to slow down and react so that road gets blocked by somebody pulling out.
All right, let's see. They'll have, if I turn on the topo, and I'll give you a distance, I hope. So the top of the bridge here is probably the high point. You're looking, if my measuring tool will work, you're looking at 750 feet. So that, if they're going the speed limit, yes, they have adequate time. If they're speeding, they might not. but that's a big if.
Doug, the nearest commercial on that side is where?
On the side where this is located, there really isn't anything. On the other side of the interstate, the city annexed some property to the, I guess that'd be the northeast. As you can see right there, it's a planned industrial development. That's what that stands for. I'm not exactly sure what that is going to be used for in the city, but that's a city zoning designation. But on the west side of I-24, again, there really isn't any commercial zoned property around there. I would say the closest probably commercially zoned, non-residentially I should say, would probably be up at the intersection of Elam Road and Elam Road and Butler, where we just rezoned some property not too terribly long ago. No, right here.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have the same concerns that Commissioner Avawater has mentioned right here, is the entrance into this property and getting here. Some of my concern is that we've had the property owners that would be sharing that drive here and said that they were available to discuss that, but nobody has come back to discuss that or followed through with it, and that there had been time to do so. So the individuals did not seek to fix that. And I think our staff has mentioned the fact that something would have to be done there to make that to work anyway, that had to be a shared drive. Am I not correct?
Yes. Yeah, if something would, if this were to be approved, whenever they were to submit, of course, they'd have to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals first for that use.
Go that direction to do
but
that.
honestly, regardless of what they want to use it for, if it were going to be a non-residentially zoned piece of property, regardless of what they wanted to do there, they're going to have that same issue as far as access. That's not going away.
That's a major issue, and what I'm seeing there is availability for entrance, availability for traffic to go through there, and this hasn't been taken care of. The way I see it, and we've sat here and spent this much time doing this, I'm going to make the motion to deny.
We have a motion and a second to deny item 19-A022 for Edward Ellsworth. Any other questions or comments at this time? All those in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye. Any opposition? Motion to deny carries. Thank you. Item 6D2, 19-A023, Brandon Michael for B&K Properties. Location is 10066 Old Lebanon Highway. Commission district is 2. County Commissioner is Steve Piercy. Size of the site is approximately 7.8 acres. Tax map is 22. The existing zoning is RM, residential medium density. Proposed zoning is CS for commercial services. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. This property is located along Old Lebanon Road. As you can see, the property extends from Old Lebanon Road all the way to 231 Lebanon Pike. The applicant would like to zone this property commercial services in order to construct a self-storage facility on the property. This is very similar in a request, for what they're requesting as the last application was. Information provided by the applicant states that the 231 corridor is changing rapidly with many new subdivisions coming into the area. The population growth and commercial nature of the property point toward a successful mini storage project. The concept plan that was submitted by the applicant, which again is included with your agenda packets, does show a total of 700 units possible on this property. Again, the applicant's materials do not specify as to whether there'll be an office, apartment, or anything like that, but or provisions for boats and other or recreational vehicles for that matter. But again, that information isn't necessarily needed at this point. Should this be approved, that'd be something they would have to kind of flesh out with staff as they went forward. Similar to the last application, if this is to be approved, since this is not a planned development application, they are not locked into their concept plan, nor are they locked into the use. And again, I'll just say for the sake of those in the audience and those who may be watching on TV at home, that a self-storage facility is not a use by right in the commercial services zone. It would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for special exception approval. Even if that's approved, then it would have to come back through the Planning Commission for site plan approval. The concept plan shows access to the property along Old Lebanon Road and not Lebanon Pike. Of course, verifications of county requirements for access and parking would have to be made during the site plan review process should this application be approved. Again, commercially zoned properties would require a Type 2 buffer. Existing plantings can be used, but again, if this should be approved, the landscape plan would have to be submitted to staff that would demonstrate compliance with that buffer requirement. And performance standards, of course, would also apply. Self-storage facilities, again, I sound like a broken record here because these applications are fairly similar. They do not generally create the same amount of traffic as other retail uses do. The closest non-residentially zoned property is located a little over a mile to the south of the subject property at the Cutoff Road Lebanon Pike intersection. Just something to alert the Planning Commission. Property immediately to the north applied for a rezoning conditional use permit back in 2008 that was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission and ultimately was denied by the Board of Commissioners. If I remember right, it was also for a self-storage type facility. And again, that was back in 2008, so that's been 11 years. But I just wanted to make you aware of that. When I was doing my research, I noticed that. I thought that'd be something you'd be interested in. So with that, I believe the applicant is present, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have on this. I will say that we have received some phone calls with concerns on this application as well.
Any questions for staff at this time? The applicant available?
Good evening. I would like to thank the committee for hearing this proposal tonight, for the property located at 10066 Old Lebanon Road. My intentions are building a storage unit facility there, and just to let you know a little bit about me, I have lived here in Rutherford County for over 30 years. My family's been here for over a century. And for the past 6 years, my wife and kids have lived in this community, and we have seen the rapid influx of rooftops expand over 1,000 since we've been there. I would like to say that a storage unit facility for this area is much needed, and I'm going to hit some highlights real quick as to why our area and community needs that. First is we do not have hardly any commercial businesses out there. The few commercial businesses that are out there are being ran out of their residential homes. Those people are paying commercial business tax on their business and earnings. And I would propose that we have a storage facility out there because every storage unit facility on this side of town of Rutherford County within a 25-mile range is at a 95% occupancy rate, meaning there is less than 5% vacancy available for our residents in our community. Now, that is checking with the owners of storage unit facilities in that area, and I have also noticed that the price is increasing because supply is not meeting demand. Now, I live in a neighborhood called Cascade Falls out there in Walter Hill, and there are other communities, or I should say other neighborhoods in our community that I have met with the people, spoke with them. Many people are driving to Wilson County, Davidson County for their storage right now. There is not enough storage here in Rutherford County to handle that. And I'm speaking from residents, and I've also spoke with business owners, like Mike Collins at Smyrna Ready Mix and other healthcare facilities on this side of town. So I know that there is a use for residential. I would like to have something that is not only affordable, but convenience. There is 15 to 25 minutes that people are driving right now to their storage facilities, even if they're located in Rutherford County. And so being able to drive a couple minutes down the road would be very convenient. Now, there is one thing I would like to address on the north side of the property, and you can look on the handout to the committee on the second page. it's the short side, as I call it. On the north side of the property, there is John Hackney Lane. It is a one-lane road, and it is highly traveled. There are people coming from Old Lebanon Road that want to get out to 231 and vice versa. I have seen a lot of near wrecks. I have looked up police reports and seen that there have been wrecks. And my concern is that there is, the ability for major wrecks on 231, people turning in there, there's no turning lane, and the people tend to meet in the middle going one way or the other, and there's nothing there on the sides for them to pull off. So it means that cars are going in reverse on main roads, and it's causing what I think would be a hindrance to traffic. Now, let me just address the security of what a storage unit can bring to a community. Now, I've been out there for 6 years, and in my neighborhood, we've had an influx of break-ins. Why do we have an influx of break-ins? There's not enough lights, and there's not enough cameras. At a storage unit facility, 24/7, 365, there is cameras rolling, so we have surveillance, and there will be LED lights there. So with the increase in lightage, as well as the security, it would help the residents around there maintain security. It would reduce break-ins, it would reduce crime. Now, I would also like for this facility, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm a charitable person, I would like for this to be a good place of goodwill, whether we're raising, charity, or whether we're doing charity events for people in our local community, or just goodwill for residents over in Walter Hill. In the past 15 years, I've been an entrepreneur. I have started up, developed, and built businesses as well as real estate. All of those businesses are right here in Rutherford County. I've been paying business tax. I've been, developing the area, making things nicer. One of the projects I did a couple years ago was over on Murfreesboro Road, in between Smyrna and Murfreesboro. It was the old Bill's Carpet Mart. I don't know if y'all remember that, but it sits off in between Murfreesboro Road and the railroad tracks, in between Nissan and the 840 corridor right there at Murfreesboro Road. So it was dilapidated, tear down. I was able to build that back, put businesses in there, drive commerce to that area. And since then, companies like Dollar General and a couple other small businesses have come into that area because it's not a dead zone anymore. I intend to do the same thing. And as everybody knows, this area of 231 is growing. There is about to be a new middle school. There is about to be a new high school. If you don't think commerce and commercialization is not going to come with that, then I've got something to tell you, because it's happening, and I'm seeing it happen. And that's why I want to be on the forefront of being able to provide something that is a low carbon footprint, something that is a low-traveled area, but also beneficial to the residents of our community. It would reduce the noise pollution. I've camped out at the land several times, and I've noticed that the noise pollution from the cars, sirens, for the people that live across the street from me would be greatly reduced by having buildings and structures there to reflect the sound. I've also noticed that in this area, that it is going to be growing, and I want to put something there that the residents can use, but also with that, I don't want to disturb residents. So whenever I'm building this facility and whenever I'm running the business, you're looking at a 7 a.m. time to a 7 p.m. access time for the business. There will be no 1 o'clock in the morning people banging, making noise, and waking residents up. And so with that set time, it will actually reduce the amount of, anything that could happen, any liabilities that could happen, whether that be a noise complaint or, people just trying to get into the storage unit facility. Other than that, if y'all have any questions, I would please like to hear it. And once again, I appreciate the committee and their time. And I would also like to note that I have spoke with several residents, as I've said, and other businesses, and I know there is a need for this. It's just up to y'all to let us know if you would welcome this for this. And so with that, I thank you again, and I'll open it up to questions.
I'm pleased that you're here because we very often get engineers and don't get the actual owners up here. So I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
One of the things that we hear quite frequently that citizens, when they come with concerns, is the issue of potentially people making meth in these. So I'm sure as part of your business plan, you've had to think about, what if? So what kinds of things as a business owner have they taught you, or are they teaching in that industry to try to mitigate that kind of risk?
Well, that's a good question, and I appreciate that. Luckily, I have been in healthcare waste for the past 15 years. So I have been in the business of disposing of and treating hazardous waste. So I am aware of the pharmaceutical side, I'm aware of the hazardous waste side, toxins, and anything that is like near contaminant or hazardous, I'm aware of that stuff. So I do know how to treat that stuff, and I would make available anything necessary that we would need out there to combat that or help treat that. I don't see a big meth problem. I actually sit on a couple of boards regarding this, and I'm a liaison in between, like DEA and other agencies that deal with this, and so I don't see a major problem with that. And like I said, when you have lights, cameras, criminals are not going to go to a well-lit area where they're filmed and able to be prosecuted because there's, the tail of the tape. And so I don't see that being an issue in our area because of a storage unit facility being built there.
So industry-wide, there's nothing that that they're teaching you all as owners about a way to mitigate? Is it primarily the lights and the cameras that mitigate the risk?
Of course, yeah, and that's the thing is like I'm aware of the issues in Rutherford County and all over America with the crisis that we face in regards to that. Now, I have not seen or heard of anything in our community. I know that I help other business owners, I consult for them, and so anything from healthcare insurance to being able to combat, whether it's eye wash stations or, something, EpiPens, anything like that to keep on site to help if something happens, respirators, all that stuff. So.
And I know we're talking about, right now we're just talking about zoning. We're not talking about a specific site plan, so we would come back and have that conversation. But you are showing the primary access off of Old Lebanon Road, which is a state road. Did you explore the idea at all of an access off of Hackney or off of Lebanon, just so that you're not slowing down traffic on Old Lebanon, on Old Lebanon Road?
Yes, I did. I did consider that. Now, my understanding of having to get an address change is a process, and it would be something that I would have to come to the committee and do, from my understanding, to get approval for that. And yes, there is actually a driveway off 231, and I would like to use that, but with the current address, because I purchased the property back in January of this year, and with the current address at the Old Lebanon Road, that's what when we applied for this, that's what we did. But I would actually prefer it be off of 231 if possible, just because that is a major highway, and it's actually one of the busiest sections of road in Tennessee. And so there are a lot of cars that travel down there, and it would be, in my opinion, better if there was an entrance point from there, but currently right now, where the address is located, the mailbox is on Old Lebanon Road.
And with the lights and the cameras and all that, this is you can see it's a predominantly extremely rural area. And so one of the concerns that we would typically hear from neighbors would be the concern about, property values being lowered because of, light pollution, things like, just things like that are changing the character of that area. So have you given any thought to ways, again, that you would mitigate that footprint impact to the surrounding community, whether it be buffers or how you plan on, you know, lighting the facility? Have you given some thought to that?
Yes, ma'am. So I had a landscaping company for 7 years. It was the first company I started when I graduated college. And once I got back here, I started that. And so I do a lot of designing still for landscape. So it would have a buffer zone with evergreen trees around it. You wouldn't be able to see the perimeter of it because of the bushes and everything. And I can show you plenty of projects that I've done here in Rutherford County on a residential and commercial level to show that I would do that. Now, the way the lights are positioned, and these are LED lights too, so I mean we're not using, you know, fluorescent bulbs or anything like that. The way they are positioned and the way they have timers on them, they are there to not disrupt anybody around that would live either across the street or beside us. Now, the one thing that I've heard people talk about is the home values lowering. I don't know any land here in America that has lowered in property value because a storage unit was. It's actually quite the opposite. It actually increases the value of the property simply because if you're going to build a nice new facility, you're going to put proper lighting, you're going to build everything new, that's actually going to increase the value. And I have plenty of statements or plenty of facts from Tennessee, Texas, Florida to show that. So that's just one of the stigmas and one of the negative connotations that people assume that is out there. In all reality, it actually increases the value of the properties. And I'm able to go out and get that data. If you need that, I can prove that for, you know, proof.
Other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Any other questions for staff? At this time, I'll declare the public hearing open for item number 19-A023, Brandon Michael for B&K Properties. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Please give your name and address.
Thank you for your time. My name is Bruce Short. I live out there where this gentleman's Ashton go. My address is 10173 Old Lebanon Road. Corner of my front yard is right in front of John Hackney's Lane. And like he said, he'd been there 30 years. Well, that one particular place where I live, I've been there 39, but in the Silver Hill community, I've been there about 64 years. And so I know how things changed around there. And he was talking about maybe putting it in there and using the old road, as right now we have got so much traffic from his place where we live, Cascade Falls and Fall Creek, that subdivision, and where they building on that cut-off road down there. There's so much traffic. And people is trying to come in at John Hackney's Lane. I'm all time, at least once or twice a month, pulling people out of the ditch there where it's so bad. And he said he would like to come off the main 231 out there, but I don't know if the state will let him do that, because where he's talking about he's got to drive just a few yards down there. There's about 8 by 10 big concrete waterway, spillway that the state put in back in the 50s, so the water can drain from the opposite side, and it comes on his property, and all that water runs down to the bottom of the hill, and it done washed, eating up a flat rock, and it washes over across 231. I seen water cross the highway, and where he's at, Down the old Lebanon Highway, there's no ditch or nothing, so the water runs down, then it runs across the old Lebanon Road. It's just so much traffic. And he's talking about lights. I don't believe I need no more lights out there. I like it dark when it's so I can sleep. And I don't like tires, squealing the tires and stuff coming out of the lane. And the school buses now, the lady had to change her route because I got grandkids go to school there at Wilson Elementary. And coming over the hill, she couldn't stop because the traffic, they afraid they would run into her. So she now had to change her route to come up the hill to let my granddaughters off at the house every day. And it's a dangerous place. And let's see what else. I have not talked to one in the neighborhood is for that. My neighbor side me, Kim Young, up on the hill, and I remember right over the hill, Bill and Nancy, when they turned that down for that storage unit also, that was a lot better place, even this one, but they turned it down just because of the traffic and other reasons stuff. And it's on the hill, where's the water going to go? It can't. There's a hill both ways. And so, and our storage unit is built on concrete, so it's got to go somewhere. And I don't see where it can go. So I appreciate it if y'all help turn it down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for listening to me. My name's George Davis. My place is 10087 Old Lebanon Road. I'm the one right there. I'm the closest person to him where his entrance is. As far as lights, I've got lights in my front yard, so I don't need no more lights. The gentleman, I agree with him, he did talk to some of the neighbors about this, but he told me there was going to only be a couple of houses there. He is going to try if he could get his zone for that. So it turned from one house to 700 storage units. The property he's talking about, if he does get it changed to new road over there, it's a real steep hill he's coming out of, and I'm going to be listening to trucks all night long. He says he's going to close it at 7 o'clock, but if they got a punch-in thing, they can punch it in past 7 o'clock, I'm pretty sure. As far as everything being safer and stuff like that, I've got a friend that's got a place like that. They've got lights, they've got cameras, they've got everything. But for some reason, he has had a trailer and a pontoon boat stowed out of there, and they didn't catch neither one of them. But as far as that, you know, he kind of wishy-washy with me, and that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, especially when I had it. The water runs down the road, it runs in my driveway, so if it really gets real bad, it'll rush across his property. And if he's going to build concrete over there, then I'm going to have more of a problem because it's a hill coming down through there and I'm across the road. I have a 5x8 utility trailer, and I've got a Nissan pickup. And I have issues getting it out of my driveway. And his driveway's right across from mine. So I don't see how a big 10 or 15-foot trailer is going to be able to pull out of there, especially with the traffic topping a hill down there. I can pull out of my driveway, and they're right on top of me before I can do anything because I can't see them coming around the curve and over the hill. He's talking about John Bragg's Highway. Yes, there's a lot of wrecks at John Bragg's Highway. We hear a lot of sirens because of it. I think that this place is going to cause problems instead of make it. I know it is for me because I don't want to really hear it. I don't want to hear that noise at night. Somebody in a big truck trying to pull out up that hill if they are on the other side. They're going to be running out in my my yard and everything else if they try to turn that curve. But, you know, this is the place I live. I retired here, and I'd like a little peace and quiet. Now we got a lot of traffic already, and I think this is going to cause more problems. Thank y'all for listening. Have a blessed day.
Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request? Commissioner Piercy.
Ladies, gentlemen of the Planning Commission, looks like the mini storage business is booming out our way. We were here about 4 to 6 weeks ago discussing one that had some commercial buildings and all with it. And I'm back here tonight to try to get you to look at this one in the same way. I'll have to give Mr. Brandon an applaud. He done very well presenting his want. I think that's one of the best ones I've seen presented. But I picked up on a few things that he had in his presentation that really sticks out in this application. The Hackney Lane that they're referring to is no more than a single driveway. There's nothing there. To be improved, they would have to somebody would either have to buy or donate the property. The county would have to spend the money to widen the road to a 2-lane road, and right now we're spending about all the money we need to on roads. He said that the Lebanon Highway this section was one of the busiest sections on the Lebanon Highway, in which he's correct. But on a commercial property, wouldn't you rather see commercial entrance from a state highway 2-lane, well-maintained road than an old road? Now, they don't call it Old Lebanon Road for nothing. It's old. It's been there a long time. And these people that surround this area where this property lays, they've been there a long time. When you turn off on the Old Lebanon Road off of 231, you're going out in the country. There's still country in Rutherford County, and this is some of it. It's God's country out there. There's no street lights to amount to anything. There's no nothing but country. I like it out there. If I was going to move, I might move down there, but I'm not going to move anyway. But anyway, this is 7 acres of, I believe, 7 something. What is the book?
7.8.
7.8 acres. That's a lot of mini storage. You know, time could go by, he get part of it built, somebody come by and want to buy it, build something else. Of course, you'd have to come back before this committee to do it. But really, with the only zoning commercial close to that is nearly a mile away, this really falls under spot zoning, and we don't need that on the Lebanon Highway. There's plenty of territory back toward Murfreesboro to build mini storage on, or build whatever you want to build on it. The land may be a little more expensive, but I'd say you could build about whatever you wanted to on it if you can buy it. Other than that, I did see some pictures. Well, I did drive out there the other day, and it looks like it had already started maybe filling with some shot rock or something on this property. Don't know. You know, he may have just had it laying around, pushed it up in a pile. I don't know if it was dumped there or created there. I don't know. But with that being said, I would ask you to look at this long and hard, and we need to give this area out there time to develop. Let the roadways develop for this commercial, and let the commercial come from Murfreesboro, not from the county line back toward Murfreesboro. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Piercy. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request?
Chairman Phillips, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Rountree with Holston Steel Engineering. I'm working with the client in regards to trying to get this approved. And as he mentioned, as Mr. Pearson mentioned, it was a fantastic presentation. And as he mentioned, there's a need out there. So it's a question of when the timing's right to go ahead and start beginning to prepare for all the development we're seeing around that area. Just for clarification, just want to make sure that the John Hackney Road that was brought up, that one-lane road that people are using to kind of cut through to get to 231, Mr. Michaels is prepared to improve that on his nickel. So that's something that he wants to do to make sure it's safer. And as one of the neighbors is concerned, seeing getting cars out of that ditch that are right across the street, that's something that we can alleviate as far as the problem's concerned. We know that as far as development's concerned, mini storage is probably the least impactful as far as traffic, and that's been brought up on both the cases. So I think from a traffic standpoint, that's something we got to consider. If it's that bad out there in so many ways, the mini storage is the least impacting on that. And stormwater was mentioned. We know that stormwater has to be handled on site, so anything that has to be done on that site, we'll make sure that stormwater is taken care of. Lighting, there's a lot going on with lighting as far as how to control that. But one thing Mr. Michaels said that I think is fantastic is limiting access, doing a lot to make sure it's not a 24/7 type of operation. And I think that's a great application for that. There may be a day that changes way in the future where there's more demand and it changes as far as the demographics around the area. But to limit your use on the initial proposition is a great thing as far as 7 to 7. And we know that mini storage is a concern. It's the only reason he wants to do it out there because he believes it can be successful because there's a need. And as he mentioned, he wants to make it somewhat localized so people don't have to drive all the way across the county to get to a mini storage unit. So I think the lighting and the stormwater can be handled. As far as the traffic, again, it's a low-use type of application. And as far as John Hackney, he would like to improve that as part of the proposition that we're proposing. So with that in mind, I just thank you for hearing that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Be quick. I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners?
I just want to clarify one thing. It's probably with Doug and with Nick. The application is for a rezoning. It's not for a planned development. So in terms of the guarantees about lighting, improving Hackney Road, and the access and the hours, we can't hold him to any of that, correct?
That's correct. Now, I will say that if this is rezoned and he were to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for this use, the Board of Zoning Appeals can place reasonable conditions upon a special exception review and approval for something like that. Now, that's assuming the use continues to be a self-storage type facility. If he comes back and says, you know what, I've looked at this, I've decided I want to do something different that's allowed in the zoning, that's allowed by right, then you're correct. I mean, we lose all of that ability to control any kind of hours of operation, lighting, I mean, of course, any kind of lighting, they have to do a photometric plan anyway. But as far as the road improvements, I mean, we could ask him to dedicate right-of-way for his half, but that portion is only, as information provided to us, is a 20-foot right-of-way, which is not much. So, and that's only half of, he can only do half of it. You can't do the whole road. He would have to, improve only a portion of it, his half, and then we would have to, see if there was the ability to get some right-of-way across the street. That's assuming, there was funds available in the county coffers to do that.
Can you bring up the zoning map again so we can see the zoning?
The orange, as you see, is RM. That's, of course, residential medium density across the street of Lebanon Pike, at least. RL, that's residential low density. That was kind of where the break point was. And you can see the closest non-residential zoning is to the south. It's right at the very bottom of the map there. That's a plan. That's Griffith Park rezoning. Of course, those two tracts of land right there that Mike's highlighting, those went to the Planning Commission Board. Well, actually, they didn't make it to the Board of Commissioners, but you've looked at those properties at the Planning Commission. for commercial development, possible mini storage type of development. And then right across the street, Lebanon Pike there, you see that real small triangle commercial neighborhood. That was a pre-existing commercial zone under the old ordinance that was kind of grandfathered in with the commercial neighborhood zoning.
Question for Doug and Mike. From a safety to the motoring public, be best to have the entrance on 231 or I'm sorry, on Lebanon Road or Old Lebanon Road?
Pick your poison.
Yeah, Lebanon Road, of course, it's a state road, but it's you know, in a sense of the construction, it's got wider shoulders than Old Lebanon Road does. It also has a higher speed limit than Old Lebanon Road does. Lebanon Road's also going to have a higher traffic count. Again, when we look at the traffic counts for this that TDOT identified, now granted, if I recall, the closest traffic count that TDOT had on this was about a quarter of a mile to the north. You're looking at about 4,500 vehicles a day. Now, there were no traffic counts along Old Lebanon Road, but you know, I would wager that it's probably not as high as what you would see on Lebanon Pike. So, I mean, you've got your pluses and minuses on both sides, quite frankly. You know, it's higher speed on Lebanon Pike. However, there's more, right in this area at least, there's more residences right there on the other side of Old Lebanon Road. You're going to have a higher speed on Lebanon Pike than you would Old Lebanon Road, but Lebanon Pike is going to be probably a little wider with the shoulders, as you can see on the overhead there. Mike, if you want to chime in.
And there's also elevation changes. Here's the old driveway entrance he was talking about here, but just a little bit farther to the south, you've got about a 12-foot drop-off, maybe more in places. So that would be another challenge if we could not get an entrance here. John Hackney, rebuilding it is going to be a challenge and a half. That's about 7 or 8% right here, and typically you want 3 or 4% at an intersection, a stop condition. So that would need a lot of work, widening and lowering the grade too. And then you've got sight distance issues with all this vegetation and rock wall here.
Another question, Doug. Will this property will it have to have a septic system / sewer, or will there be a need for that with a storage unit? And if so, can that be taken care of on this property? Because it's been said it's flat rock.
Right. If they want to provide some sort of an office or manager's apartment or something like that, the answer is yes, they would have to provide some sort of a septic system on the property. Now, they're not required to do that. A lot of the newer facilities that we see, a lot of them are just operated by electronic kiosk. So there really isn't anybody ever on site. There's a phone number or a website to contact the folks, and they handle everything electronically at that point. But now, as far as whether or not this could support, now it looks like there's an existing house on a property. There's got to be some sort of a septic system there. So if they want to do some sort of an office or something like that, they would need to identify where that system is and their soil area is and preserve that. But if they just decided they didn't want to do it and just have a mini storage unit, didn't have any of those facilities, then they could do that. They wouldn't be required to at that point.
If there are no more questions, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to deny the application. I do feel like, consistent with our previous votes in this area, commercial development is premature at this point. This particular location also seriously lacks the infrastructure in terms of road width and safety to support a commercial development. So I'll make a motion to deny.
Is there a second to that? We have a motion and a second to deny item 19-A023 Brandon Michael for B and K Properties. Other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye. Opposition? The motion to deny carries. Thank you. Item 6D3, 19-A024, Cliff Smith for CPS Land. Location is 6837 Old Nashville Highway. Commission district is 19. The county commissioner is Steve Irvin. Size of the site is approximately 108 acres. Tax map is 56. The existing zoning is residential medium density. Proposed zoning is a planned unit development. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. As you stated, the applicant is asking for a planned unit development on this property for the Sycamore Grove subdivision. The pattern book has been included with your agenda packets. We also have it for the big screen to be able to refer to that as this public hearing moves forward. The pattern book does identify a total of 250 lots with a minimum lot size of 6,800 square feet. Some of those lots are a minimum of 60 feet wide, with the remainder being 55 feet wide. The development would be served by a step system, and water would also be provided from CUD. Homes are to be constructed with masonry front exteriors, vinyl siding on all other elevations. Additional information can be found in your pattern book, and I would imagine that the applicant would probably want to make a presentation prior to our comments. The concept plan does show 2 access points to the property along Old Nashville Highway. There is access to the step system from Burleson Lane, kind of in that little appendage area there. Mike's going to bring up the concept plan here. But that's just so everybody understands that if this is approved, that access is strictly for the step area. It's not for access to the rest of the neighborhood. So the 2 access points would be onto, the primary access points would be onto Old Nashville Highway. Several of the comments that we had after looking at this pattern book, something we did want to see was a potential stub out. You can see they did provide a stub out to the south, kind of midway through the south portion of the property in that area. So that is something that we're glad to see. The original design of this, when they brought it in, was actually, they've changed that design slightly. Originally, there's about 216 lots that really were kind of dependent on one access, but they've kind of shifted the roads around a little bit, where even if one of these access points is blocked, pretty much all these homes have the ability to get to the other access point. So again, just looking at it from an accessibility standpoint, we thought that was a good improvement. You can see some of the common area, a mail kiosk lot, that was also at the end of the cul-de-sac at the extreme southern end of the property. They have moved that to a more central location as well. Buffering is not typically required between residential subdivisions. You can see that they are identifying about a little over 16 acres of open space, with about a little more than half of that being usable based on, I think about okay, not quite half it, but about 7.81 acres, which meets our criteria. But you can see that there's a lot of existing tree lines there. They are proposing a 30-foot tree protection easement, on both sides, the north and south side, as well as on the west side of the property where you see the step system is located. I'm going to let Mike get into a little bit more of the drainage of this subdivision, the proposed subdivision. This is something that staff has had quite a bit of concern about, and we have met with the applicant, and the applicant is aware of our concerns, but I'll let Mike go into that just a little bit further. Something else that the applicant is proposing as part of this are turn lane improvements on Old Nashville Highway to both of the access points. You can see one of the access points lines up with Washington Boulevard, which goes to on the other side of Old Nashville Highway. That would be a turn lane right there, and then the one further to the northwest would also have turn lanes. So the one to the southeast, where Washington Lane is, you would have improvements for both Washington on the northeast side, and then for this subdivision as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike for some of the concerns that we have for the drainage, and then we'll be happy to take questions from there.
Okay. This is aerial imagery from February and March of earlier this year, when we had the historic rains that seemed like it rained every other day in February. And you could see several areas of ponding on the property. And the design team is aware of the challenges, but I just wanted to make y'all aware of the situation that we're in. A lot of this area does not drain to a surface creek or stream. There are a lot of sinkholes that they drain to. This property does have a lot of good soil on it, a lot of Harpeth, Loman, Cumberland, a lot of good soils that help soak in rainwater, but without a way to drain off the excess, the rainfall, you've got areas that will pond. So that what they've discussed with me is, they're going to over excavate these areas where water collects now, one here and then I think one up here. Their septic system soil will be back in this area. But they're going to use that material that they excavate out to bring the lots up in the subdivision. And then what we would do for the existing homes surrounding this, we would have them do a detailed evaluation, stormwater evaluation of the water surface elevation in these ponds for various storm events. So another big storm comes along, this subdivision is built out, the water won't elevate on the neighbor's property is what we're looking at. We don't want to impact our neighbors if we can do everything possible to do that. I will turn on, I believe this area is also in the 2010 flood imagery. And you can see more that, what they were dealing with back in the historic 2010 floods. And I'll also turn on the topography. There's a rise in the middle, a high point, but like I said, a few depressions, enclosed depressions that don't have the benefit of a surface drainage off-site. Just as a side note, Lot 9 here on Washington and Adams is one of the houses we're going to make a FEMA buyout request for, this house here, and I think there's a couple more on Adams Street that did not have the benefit, these are older subdivisions, did not have the benefit of the technology we have today, and a lot of the topographic information. A lot of these houses were built in essentially bowls, so we're going to try to prevent that, and then also not impact the surrounding neighbors with the development. As far as drainage. Yes, sir. This is an enclosed depression. Most likely, there could be a throat on it, but soil collects over the throat over time, so that that's going to be a challenge to make sure it doesn't impact the step system. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will say as well that we did get the will serve letters from Consolidated Utility on this as far as the water and the step soils are concerned. The step soils identified the ability to accommodate about 227 lots versus 250 what they're asking for. I spoke with the applicant's representative prior to the meeting. He said that there are some additional soils that they still have to have evaluated. They realize that they may not get exactly 250 out of this. That's the maximum they would get, so there may have to be a little bit of a reduction as far as the number of lots based on the analysis of those additional soils. But as far as the road network and everything, that would remain unchanged. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well.
I wouldn't say every rain, but heavy, sustained rains, over several days. And, some of the residents might speak to that, but I would say if it's an enclosed depression, it's going to collect rainwater and it's going to hold it until it can evaporate or soak in the ground. This is more bird's eye imagery of the flooding from the May of this year. February, March.
Mike, just to summarize, with approval to build on this piece of property, the engineering plan to deal with the water on the piece of property and how it might affect property owners surrounding this piece of property would have to be presented and approved by our staff, correct?
Yes, sir. There's
Okay.
several steps involved. We've got, after rezoning, we've got the preliminary, we've got the construction plans for each section that they want to build. So there's several steps that they would have to show to us that they meet our design requirements and then also not impact the surrounding properties.
So handling of the water,
That's going to be a big one. And,
it would be a problem, but also a problem that would have to be approved by our engineering department as well as their engineers when they present their proposal, correct? Okay. Questions for staff?
Mike, you may have said this, and I apologize if you did and I missed it. Are you aware of us ever installing a step system in an area with that kind of depression?
That might be an answer for CUD. Off the top of my head, we design step systems in floodplains all the time, because that's where the best soil collects over time. But I don't know about an enclosed depression.
And then on, it's labeled as page 6 in the plan book, but it's actually page 8 on the tablet. It's got that little landmass right there sort of carved out, and it's labeled as existing tree canopy. But then when you go to page 8, which is 10 in the booklet, it looks like it shows that area developed over. So on one, it gives me the impression that those trees are preserved, and then in another one, it makes it look like they're not preserved. So am I reading too much into that?
Well, I think on just looking at this, the one that's on it's on page 8 of the develop. I think that's kind of like an existing conditions page, and then I don't think that's necessarily saying we're preserving those trees. It's just showing that's where they are. And then again, like you said, on the other one, you can see that there is development proposed for where that area is. I don't think they were necessarily trying to say that's going to be preserved.
Because usually when something's not shaded in, it's because they're not developing in that shaded area. And then when you get to the next page, it is shaded in. So I was just trying to follow the logic there.
Right. I think that was just, and the applicant can speak more to that, but the way I look at this, that was just more existing conditions currently.
One other quick question. A planned unit development would give us, as a county, more control over that development and how we handle the particular problems on that piece of property. Is that a fair statement?
It is. The reason being, when it comes to a planned development, and for those who may be watching in the audience or at home, planned development is more of a specific plan. The previous two applications we looked at, as you recall, they were asking for more of a conventional zoning classification, which if you look at our zoning ordinance, there are uses by right allowed in those zones. There are certain uses that aren't allowed, et cetera. In a planned development, they're essentially creating their zoning district, in a sense. So what is approved in this pattern book, which we're showing portions of on the screen, there'll be a hard copy. If this were to be approved, there'd be a hard copy in the file. And then as development occurs based on this development plan, we would compare what they're submitting to what is included in their pattern book, and they would have to match at that point. There are some allowances for some minor deviations and things like we talked about before, the ability to reduce the number of lots, reductions of lots if they're not changing the road network at all. Those are certain things we can handle administratively, but if they wanted to come back and do wholesale changes, or if they wanted to come back and change uses, home sizes, those kind of things, those are all things that would have to come back through the similar process that we're going through right now.
There's 2 lots that are located south of that property, that depression where the stormwater pond is, and it looks like, especially that first lot has an issue with water, maybe even quite often. Would it also be a fair statement to say if they improve the drainage on this piece of property, it could also help that piece of property as far as their water problems, so it could actually potentially help a couple of homeowners that are experiencing some problems right now, potentially?
Yes, sir. There's always a potential to improve the drainage around the situation.
Other questions for staff? Let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Commissioner Phillips, Rob Moulton, SEC. On behalf of CPS Land, I have a couple of the development team members here in the audience as well. I guess I could go in 2 ways in this. I can give you a brief introduction, as we talked about. And, this piece of property is relatively located middle of the way between Murfreesboro and Smyrna. It's a very developable piece of land. Old Nashville Highway, as it's talked about in your report, is currently a 2-lane road with potential for expansion out to 5 lanes between Smyrna and Murfreesboro at some point in time in the future. The county has no plans for the expansion, but that would be left up to Murfreesboro and Smyrna, depending on who would get jurisdiction of that road in the future on that side. The plan itself, regards to the property, we're looking at about 108 acres overall. We're looking at a maximum lot count of 250 lots, which would give us about a 2.3 units per acre basis on this, so which more or less falls in line with a traditional RM zoning within the county, which is a 15,000 square foot lot depiction in regards to the RM zoning. So we're in line more or less with common zoning within the RM district, other than the fact that we're condensing this down and allowing for the step system on that side. The overall plan itself, we'll be having 16 acres of open space, so that's roughly about 14% of the property. That's in addition to the overall step system, which accounts for about 33 acres, which is about 30% of the property on that side. So all in all, we'll be looking close to about almost 45% of this property being left in some kind of open space or green space, whether that's usable open space, which would be the 14% for the recreational area, or the other portion, which is part of the step system on that side. As Doug talked about, we were looking at 2 different typical lot sizes in this development. We're looking at a 55-foot wide by 125-foot deep, and the larger size, which is the 60-foot wide by 125 foot. So our minimum lot size in this will be about 6,800 square feet. We'll be incorporating a 35-foot front setback, 20-foot rear setback, and our typical 15-foot or 7.5-foot side setbacks between structures on that side. A little bit about the architecture that you've seen in your book. We've got a couple pages in the book in regards to the architecture character, what we're looking for in regards to the homes for this property. My clients are looking at trying to present a timeless architecture that reflects Southern heritage. I think you see some of the examples of the elevations that we're proposing for this development in here in regards to that. I think you have very good character, very good quality on there. That you have a lot of different architectural accents that are played into these architectural characteristics along the facades of these homes to actually give a very good, quaint, old Southern charm to them. The homes themselves, a minimum 1,400 square foot, but we're looking at averaging around 2,000 square foot per home on that side. So we're looking at price ranges on the homes between 275,000 to 300,000 square feet. That's what we're kind of marketing these at this point in time on that side. The homes themselves, we will have an all masonry front. That'll be a mixture of brick, stone, or hardy board, and the sides and rear will be a premium vinyl siding. The architectural features will enhance the traditional charm of this overall development. Doug talked about we do have 2 access points to Old Nashville. One, we do have the primary access, which will be the intersection at Washington Boulevard. The second access point will be just a little more further to the northwest along Old Nashville. This will provide 2 very good in and outs on Old Nashville for all the homes and the residents of the neighborhood. As Doug did allude to, we did make a couple modifications between the initial plan that we submitted to staff and this plan that you see before you tonight. One was that second access point. We did allow it to go further into the development and another block to allow for better access overall, say if that first intersection was blocked for some kind of accident or natural disaster on that side. We also are providing a stub to the south and about midway through the project just before you get to the step system for future connectivity should the properties to the south ever develop in the future on that side. The development will have sidewalks on one side, creating a very walkable neighborhood on that. We're creating open space amenities such as parks. We talked about also the mail kiosk location being located centrally, and talking about some unpaved trail systems for the residents for their outdoor recreational side on that side. One of the bigger features I think that's important in regards to being a good steward or a good neighbor is that we're actually looking at providing a 30-foot tree preservation area in the north and south property lines between us and the existing homes or lots to the north and south on that side on that as well. So I think overall it's a very good project. I think we can talk about a couple of the things that Mike and Doug have pointed out tonight. In regards to the overall, number one thing I think that everybody's concerned about and the residents are here to speak about the most tonight will be the drainage. We've talked about that a bunch tonight. As Mike talked about, we have had a lot of discussions between us and staff in regards to how we're going to handle this drainage out here. Gatewood, which is another subdivision just down the street from this that has been approved by this planning commission and the overall governmental body, utilized doing a 2 times 100-year event stormwater detention facility. So that is what we're planning on doing for both the ponds that we're showing on the property. So we're going to be over detaining a 100-year event by twice the volumes that are part of that. As Mike talked about in regards to that, it will potentially help out the overall drainage system that's out there right now in regards to these ponding areas. Currently today, the water, like Mike said, has no easy way out off the property. It is more or less kind of landlocked so that when that water does come down, it collects in these bowl or basin areas on that side and doesn't have a means via a ditch or a stream to move it off the property and move it to its natural channelization, which is, if you're looking at the plan, is more or less the northern end just down the road from the second access point, Old Nashville Highway. That second detention pond is our final outfall point. The stormwater that will move through this system that we're going to construct to help alleviate all the standing water that's on the property will move to the north on Old Nashville Highway and cross under a culvert and head off to the northeast back into the natural system on that side. So as Mike did talk about in the overall plan for presenting what we're doing is doing this double over detaining for a 100-year event, which is a pretty significant event on that side. I think some of the images you've seen tonight in regards to what you saw back in February and March this year, which was more or less a 2 or 3 week back-to-back event, which we can pretty almost call itself a 100-year event cumulatively on that side. This system would more or less handle that type of back-to-back situation on that side. So let alone any other common occurrence in regards to stormwater events out on that property. So I think overall the plan that we're presenting from a grading and drainage standpoint will be beneficial for not only this property, but also probably also alleviate some of the other standing water issues on neighboring properties because we'll be providing an outflow for that water to finally drain away from these properties on that side. In regards to the connectivity at Old Nashville, yes, we've had a traffic study completed. We are incorporating the requirements of that in regards to turn lanes on Old Nashville. That's at both entrances on that side. We'll still be putting in dedicated turn lanes into the subdivision. One, of course, turning in left as you're heading north towards Smyrna, and also dedicated lanes turning into the development on your way down to Murfreesboro on that side. So we're definitely taking into consideration the traffic plan on that side. We have had a hydrological geologic study done. We've had a soil study done in regards to the question in regards to the ponding water on top of the step system. The ponding water on top of the step systems, the soils, as Mike has alluded to, are very good soils. We've had that actual soil study done, and it has been approved by the state TDEC in regards to those soils, and those soils were classified as well-draining soils in regards to that. So I think the natural common occurrence that you see in regards to the water ponding up is that it does not have a means to evacuate in a timely fashion, but those soils have been deemed as a well-draining soil structure on that side. So I think I'm available for any comments now at this point in time or after the public hearing. Thank you. That water for the step system does not currently reach to that next pond over there. That pond, the first big pond that we have on there, that's more or less for everything. Like Mike said, if you look at the topo, there's a little bit of a ridge line between those two on that side. So the water that's backed in that basin that's on top of the step soils area, that does not have an easy way to get out, and we don't have a means to pull that water back around towards that side. So the ponds that we're creating on that side of that little ridge line are more or less for the developable side on that side. Now, we can definitely look at it as we're going through the construction plan. Should this move forward and get approved, we can definitely look from, with Mike and those guys in regards to trying to figure out if there's a way we can help mitigate some of that water to move across and get it into our system and move downstream to help relinquish some of that ponding effect as well. Correct. Just as Gatewood, just down the street from this development, was done and proposed and built and utilized, that pond will more or less, in a 100-year event, which is a very large event that's well over designed, we're actually taking it and doubling in capacity. So for every 100-year event, we're actually asking for it to hold two 100-year events at one point in time. So that water that does get in there will be then moved through a system of pipes and drainage pipes through the development to get to that second pond over there, and then eventually be released at the allowable standards to release it at that outfall point to go back in that natural system and flow to the north.
Public hearing's not open.
Oh, okay. I thought we was talking this flood right here every year.
Questions for the applicant?
Thank you all.
Any other questions for staff? We're going to open up the public hearing, and I'm assuming a lot of you are going to be bringing up water concerns. Let me try to ease some of those concerns. Is that this piece of property is already zoned for commercial development. I'm sorry, residential development. I'm sorry, we've had commercial all over my brain tonight, I guess. But it's already zoned for residential development. That means that they can build on that with the proper plan presented before this commission. So whether or not they can build on it is not a question. It's what type of development they're going to build, whether it's a planned unit as suggested or just a regular subdivision. No matter what they do, they're going to have to present a plan that would have to be accepted by this county and this planning commission to deal with the water, not only internally, but how it affects property owners surrounding it. So if you're concerned about water, I understand that. But this planning commission cannot address your water issues or concern. It has to be done by engineering firms, and that's what will happen before it can be developed, whether it's a planned unit development or whether it's a residential subdivision. I hope I've made myself clear. All the property owner is asking for is to be able to develop residentially by a planned unit and not a regular subdivision. So with that, I'll declare the public hearing open, and anyone wishing to speak can come forward. Your own.
Mark King, 53 Washington Boulevard. 53 Washington Boulevard. Thank you,
Mark, would you repeat your name?
sir.
Would you repeat your name?
All right, good night. Hello, everybody. I live off 5853 Washington Boulevard. Been there for 30 years. All right, flooding ain't my concern because I live sort of on the higher end right there, but I have seen the flooding pretty much every year. My main concern is that Washington Boulevard right there where it comes to Old National Highway right there. It's got a rise right there. It's a hill. I've seen numerous wrecks there, lots. It's when you come up on Washington, if you're in a car, you can't see what's coming here, and it's hard to see here. And they want to put this new road right there. It's going to be a dangerous intersection. That's my concern right there. It's a dangerous intersection there. And on Polk Avenue right here, where they want to come through and put that at Washington Boulevard there, we got Polk Avenue there. All that is a runway. That's a shortcut. These people, they already got signs up there, no through traffic. It don't stop people from Old National Highway doing a cut through there. I mean, I've had people pass me. It's 25, 30 mile an hour down through there. I've had people just passing me just to make their shortcut there. And another concern we have right there, and I know y'all probably been addressing this here, CSX Railroad has got, they have got the tracks messed up there. It's 4 tracks right there. And there's times you waiting 20 minutes to even get across them railroad tracks waiting on them trains. And we getting all this, like I say, he's talking about 250 more houses. That's probably three cars per house right there. Is the traffic, you know. And I don't know if Old National Highway at this time with 2 lanes can handle all this traffic. You know, they say, yeah, they're going to get 5 lanes. They've been talking about 5 lanes for, we've been hearing that for years and years. But it's getting where, as far as the fire and EMT, I don't know, you know, like I said, with the train tracks and all this going in here, I don't know if we can handle all the more traffic and everything. But anyway, that's my main concern is the Washington Boulevard right there and Old National Highway and the Polk Avenue and railroad track situation. All right, thank you. I'm going to go to bed.
Anyone else?
Over here, right, paralleling Broad Street.
Ronnie Butler. I live at 7965 Burleson Lane, and I know we're talking about water. I've seen a lot of water on that property. The last time it come big rain, I come out on the east side of that property on National Highway, and I just happened to look at that property, and the only part I didn't see underwater was on the far west side of it, and that's a heck of a lot of water. Now, I don't know if they can even build a retention pond large enough to hold all of that water and still build on it, and that's not even mention the traffic. We can't hardly get out on Old National Highway now. I mean, it's so heavy. I mean, it's, and I'm strongly opposed to this. It's just going to be a big burden on us. It sure is. I don't see how they can even address that water problem as much as they are on that property. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I've been fighting a cold, so I live right next door to Mark here, and the problem is the traffic. I have had one of those accidents right there at the Old Nashville Highway and Washington Boulevard, and I was trying to turn into my subdivision twice. In fact, the first time, kid hit me on the rear end. He was going way too fast down the Old Nashville Highway. The second time, I was coming. I was pulling in the Old Nashville Highway from the south side, and kid coming over the hill must have been doing 50, 60 mile an hour. Sideswiped me, put me right into the ditch. It is a bad traffic road, and since they've popped in that subdivision right there on Polk, they got a Dollar General down there now, and like Mark says, Polk is just going to become a runway. It'll become a runway all the way to Old Nashville Highway. If they could put some speed bumps in there to slow them down or something like that, that would really help. Because people don't go down to Florence, and they're not going to widen Old Nashville Highway for quite some time. I know the owner, John Lane. I've talked to him many a time. It's not going to happen. So I don't see how they can put in that many homes in an area like that without having some other way in and out. And the man that lives on Burleson, that's right there in front of the old boat factory. He can't get out there because everybody's running up and down there. It's just Old Nashville Highway needs to be widened. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I get to pull this down a little bit. Chairman Phillips and Director Tomasi and members of the Planning Commission, my name is John Lane, and I reside at 6837 Old Nashville Highway, and that is the site of the parcel in question. And I've resided there for 70 years, so I think tonight I get an award for something. I've been there for 70 years. I remember when there were 4 or 5 houses between our farm and Florence Road, and 4 or 5 houses between our farm and Baker Road. So I've seen quite a bit of development, and I understand the concerns about the traffic. The problem with our traffic is that we are in the Nashville-Murfreesboro corridor, and right there with the Old Nashville Highway, which was once U.S. Highway 41, part of the main road from Chicago to Miami. We are in a situation where we have the railroad on one side, the interstate on the other. We have a couple of ways to get out and in, one at Chicken Pike, one at Florence Road. Maybe Baker Road, although I think more traffic comes from Baker Road than goes into Baker Road. And the traffic has developed over the years, but the traffic is not developed by the locals. I would say 75 to 80% of the traffic is through traffic. People coming from miles away, going to someplace else. Now, they think that that's the convenient way for them to travel. They're not traveling on Interstate 24. They're not traveling on Murfreesboro Road. They've just recently decided that they need to use the Old Nashville Highway. I do not think that the number of lots that would be added to the county will increase the amount of the traffic on the Old National Highway significantly, because you can stand there and look down the road and you see very little traffic coming in and out of the subdivisions, but you see the traffic coming down the road from a distance. And we are a situation where we don't spend a lot of money on our roads. We just tend to take what's existing and use it best we can. But the traffic is through traffic to newer subdivisions in Murfreesboro and other areas. We happen to be in an area of prosperity. We're between Sam Ridley Parkway on one end and we're an avenue in Murfreesboro on the other. Very convenient place, great place to live. Lived there 70 years, great farm, great place to live. Whoever moves there, I think, will have a good time. The drainage, the people have complained about the drainage, and sometimes it stays there for a while. I don't think anybody actually knows how deep the drainage is. It's shallow. It's not that deep. And I think when you see the property with the appropriate amount of retention areas, I believe you'll see that a lot of that water will be taken care of in the retention areas. And you can see a picture of the place at its worst, but has anybody walked out in that water to figure out how deep that is? I don't think so. I'm ready for any questions. If anyone has any questions about this property, I'd be glad to try to answer them. My brother and I own the property. We each own a half interest. He's here tonight. If anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request?
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but we've had a cordial relationship with Mr. Lane and his brother. We've been living at 8030 Sunset Circle. Mr. Mike, can I borrow your topographic map? Yes, sir. Near the northwest point, basically you can almost see like the babbling brook that goes through. Where it ends on that north place is our property. Now, I'm probably a little bit of the opposite side of the residence. We're actually kind of looking forward to this because we think it will help the water easement if planned correctly. So let's see here. So yeah, if you basically like where the houses would stop would back up to the edge of our property. So we have a small little horse farm out there. My wife raises and breeds miniatures. So we're actually kind of looking forward to this. As long as the water issues can be addressed. We were told in the past on previous plans by a fellow resident in the area that once upon a time there was supposed to be an easement straight down the property line to the old highway when the original plans for that subdivision off Cooper Lane and Sunset were built. Now there's a lot of rock in that area because when they built the neighborhood, most of it got pushed to the edge of that wall right there along our way. So we were just hoping, we would like to make sure everything's addressed correctly because, as Mr. Phillips said, they have the right to build. We cannot stop that, but we'd like it done correctly. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much for letting us talk with you about it and hear both sides of the story. We're very concerned about the drainage also. We're on the northwest side of the property also. just a little barrier between us and the land. And so we're very concerned about that from time to time. Our property does get water on it. So we're concerned about it getting developed properly. And then the traffic, of course, from Old Nashville Highway, from Florence to Baker Road is just many accidents. My daughter's had an accident on there before, and just it's very common. And so it's going to add to that no matter what. And so that is a big concern for myself, my family. We haven't been there 70 years, been there 17 years, and just that's our major concern is that traffic. And just multiple accidents there. And of course it would add to that. So thank you so much. Thank you for letting us talk with you about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last call. Anyone else? I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners.
I know this can develop as residential medium density or the PUD that we're talking about now. Can you refresh me? I don't mean to put you on the spot. Can you refresh me about the one on Rucker that we talked about a month or two ago that was a PUD and the lot widths is what I'm struggling with?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was mentioned that the trend, this is close to the traditional residential medium density design, and I thought the point of a PUD was to be something unique. Right. I'm just not seeing that. I don't want to down anyone's design, but I just don't feel that uniqueness here other than just a lot of lots and then meeting the requirements of retention ponds and the step system. So I'm a little disappointed in the lot widths of 55 feet and 60 feet, but I know that may meet regulations. They're really nice homes, but when I started doing the math of a possible 20-foot wide driveway and then another 40 feet to the property line, if you're lucky, it just seems really cramped to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, right, that subdivision that you're referring to off of Rucker Road actually had a lot of 45-foot wide lots, which we took, even staff prior to the public hearings had informed the applicant that, we've never approved anything that narrow before. Okay. Right. We have seen subdivisions like this that do have 55 and 60-foot wide lots.
That's why I couldn't remember.
Yes, sir.
Numbers, but yeah, some reason the 60 to 70 stuck in my head, but I forgot that was 45. So that's what I wanted to make sure.
Right. And now with the fact that this is now, the reason they were able to try to ask for those narrow lots of 45-foot wide lots in that Rucker Road development was because it was on the city sewer. They didn't have to worry about the step tank issues. They'll have to worry about that here. Realistically, 55 can work on paper. We're seeing more and more in the field. It's really 60 foot's becoming more of the norm. So talking
about 5-foot difference, but I'm kind of that same way. That 60 is almost the bare minimum for me. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to get into that. I just want to kind of, find out where we were on the other one, so I'd have a baseline for this.
Yeah, they were asking for 45-foot wide lots, at least a portion of them, 45-foot wide lots on that. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike or Doug, what is the formula for number of cars per household these days?
What you're generally what you're looking at is 10 trips. 10 trips per day, not 10 cars. 10 trips per day. So that can be, that's not back and forth. That's a car leaves in the morning, that's 1. It comes home for lunch, that's 2. It leaves again, that's 3. So generally you're looking at 10 trips per day per single family unit. How many vehicles they have? Not that I'm aware of. We usually look at it by trips per day kind of a thing, as opposed to the number of cars they actually have. Yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking it was like 1.8 vehicles per home.
Yeah, I'd be happy to research into that for you. But like I said, whenever we're looking at traffic studies and things, we're looking at trip generation, which are looking at trips, not so much cars. Yeah.
The traffic count on Old Nashville Highway in 2018 was like 8,500 and some change. So now it's probably 9,000 vehicles.
Mhm.
So that seems like a lot of traffic on Old Nashville Highway. Well, I mean, can you compare that to something in town that might be an equivalent road that would have, I mean, is that like a New Salem? Is that a Mason Lane? Is that a Broad Street? What?
No, if you just bear with us for a second, yeah, I think we've got, we do have some resources here that we can try to pull up. You can just bear with us a second. I will say that, you know, it doesn't compare to, say, something like a Shelbyville Highway or something like that. I mean, you look at some of the zoning applications we looked on that, you're looking at, you know, 15, 20,000 cars per day, at a minimum. You're probably not looking at like a Broad Street or a Memorial Boulevard either from a traffic standpoint. I mean, 8,000, 9,000 cars a day, it's a good amount of cars. But we're going to see what we can pick up here. Yeah, I want one time to see here.
You're going to put 250 homes, and let's say that you average 2 vehicles a house. That's 500 cars. So forget about the trips. If you had 9,000 vehicles on Nashville Highway a day, and you're going to add another 500, that's roughly 6%. So you're making a little bit of a dent, no matter how you cut it.
I think Mr. Lane had a point a little earlier. Not everybody that's traveling that road is traveling it to go home. They're traveling it from point A, which may be Smyrna or Laverne, to point B, which may be Murfreesboro. They may work in Smyrna or Laverne and don't want to face the traffic on 41 or New Nashville Highway, so they're going the old Nashville Highway, and I think that's picking up more and more traffic. Mike, it's an issue. No matter where you are in this county, it's an issue, and it's going to continue to be a real issue. So I'm not 100% sure. Let me just give you a classic example. I live in Murfreesboro, and I've got a son who lives off of Amberville Road in Smyrna. What road do you think I travel on when I go see him? And it's not that I live in that area at all, but it's the route that I choose to go. And once again, it depends on what time of day. But the heavy traffic area time of the day is when this road is going to get heavier and heavier and heavier as well. It's an issue. And all of these people that spoke are exactly right. Traffic is an issue. But what can we, as a planning commission, do about that? Jason, can you answer some questions that relate to maybe the ponds or the step system? I think Mike had a question that maybe you could help answer for us, if you would. If you remember what that question was.
He was talking about the closed depression. I'm Jason Laxman, CUD, by the way. Mike brought up the closed depression and our intent to serve. The soils, as was referred to, are well drained, but we do have concerns with that closed depression. The water, as you saw in the maps, if Mike can bring that up, well, he's busy looking at traffic, is the potential for ponding. We do allow drainage or drip fields in floodways, floodplains, but the one thing that we have there is when it does flood, the water comes up, and as soon as it's over, it's back out. In the closed depression, where does it go? We have issue with that, and in our intent to serve letter, we asked we made a requirement that if we were to use this, we're going to require geotech study. Mike also mentioned possibility of sinkholes. He said if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and we saw the same thing. We want somebody with expertise to let us know if that is a sinkhole or not. Step systems are not allowed near sinkholes, so that is one of the issues. I had 227 lots as a maximum based on their layout. Realistically, I don't see it quite going that high because there are some irregularities in the outlines of the soils that will probably reduce that somewhat, even if that closed depression is usable. So there are some things that we have concern in it, something that, I mean, they can prove to us that it will work and meet our conditions, and it may work. But any questions?
So in the pattern book, the step system square footage that's shown would be needed to serve all 250 lots, because that depression or potential depression takes up a good portion of that proposed area. So as it stands now, the square footage that's delineated would be needed to serve 250 lots.
No, as it stands now, with the layout they have, that one cul-de-sac goes into part of what they show as potential soils on the soils map, and so we took that out. The closed depression is included in that 227. So that's why I set that as a maximum. And in the letter, I did state in there that most likely that number will be reduced. Now, there was a preliminary soils map where the soil scientists checked the whole property. The whole property appears to have pretty good soils. I think a lot of developers would be jealous. But as you saw, there's other flooding areas, but as a rule, they don't like to put the step system out at the front of the subdivision. They want to put us in the back, which is understandable, but at the same time, if they choose for more lots, it may be the soils may have to come from another part of the property.
Do you do any calculations about how many lots that area could support if you subtracted that depression area?
I don't know if Mike Sable will pull that back up, but it's a pretty significant area. I would say it may be pushing 25% of the soils area provided. I would say it's at least 20%, but that kind of brownish area, and that's something that, I mean, these aerials, our soil scientist didn't have that, and he pointed out it's on the soils map as a closed depression. And when he was out there, he saw physical evidence of ponding, basically where debris had floated, and he saw the outline. So, but as you can see, I mean, I would anticipate that's probably 20–25%.
Anybody else have any questions for Jason? Thank you.
So approving as a PUD tonight for zoning purposes, we're looking at what would potentially be the max lots allowed, because it sounds like
That's correct.
at the limit right now and
Right.
would potentially
Well,
reduce.
like I said at the beginning, the will serve letter that we were provided by CUD for this project, based on the soils that they had evaluated, gave them a total of 227. Now, the applicant did state that there was other soil that they have not had evaluated yet, which might help increase the yield. But, that kind of goes back to what he was saying about how much of that was in the, that depression area and whatnot, so. Right. Mr. Cush, to kind of follow up a little bit on your question, we did find a traffic count map that the city has online for various intersections. We did, the amount of quick research we were able to do, we looked at one count. You were kind of comparing it to possibly like a Cason Lane. Cason Lane's count was about 14,000 vehicles per day versus what this is, about 8,000 to 9,000. So it's not quite to the level of, say, of a Cason Lane. And I can speak, I live right off of Cason Lane. I know how that gets day in and day out. Mm-hmm.
My iPad's taking just a second, but on Old Nashville Highway, they have shown to put in turn lanes.
On both entrances, correct.
Ends, which
Both
is-
entrances, yes, sir.
Great improvement for that. And Washington,
Yes.
across from there.
Right. Actually, one of the pages, and Mike's going to just flip into
I
it.
was trying to find that page.
Yeah, it's toward the back. Well, maybe a little too. There you go. Yeah. You can kind of see those two diagrams there on the screen. One of them is for the, I guess that'd be the more northwest axis. And then the one to the right, that's actually where Washington Boulevard is, right there.
Because the one at Washington will have the left turn, the right turn for
Correct.
traffic toward Murfreesboro. So, am I looking at that right? East-west.
Right.
Tell you what, we have wallered this thing just about as wallering as we can do. We've had pros, we've had cons on all of this. We've discussed it. It is a PUD, which means what they say is what they have to do whenever they present this. That's the difference between what the chairman was saying a while ago, is that they can build if they want to there, but the PUD basically says what they've got in this book is what they have to follow. But we have also heard from staff, and we've also heard from CUD, that there will be other studies done, basically saying whether or not we can do the things we can do with the step system and things of this type. So those processes will have to be looked into. They'll have to be followed before they can build and whatever. So we're to that point. I'm going to make the motion that we approve it with all of the staff comments and what has been given here tonight.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 19-A024, Cliff Smith for CPS. Comments, Lee?
Doug, one more on the detention pond. They showing draining back to Old Nashville Highway right away, especially at that area that's adjacent to those other houses. Is that what I'm seeing there? I just wanted to refresh myself.
I'm not sure if that's going to be the final route, because that area, Old Nashville Highway, that's one of my major drainage concerns, complaint areas.
That's going to be a tough one. I mean, storing it will keep it off the property, but it's got to ultimately be released somewhere, and it looks like there was an easement or something back. The hope is to go toward Old Nashville Highway is what it looked like. Okay.
No, it'll need a lot of studying, a lot of pencil sharpening, a lot of calculations, and a lot of red pens. Yeah, a lot of red markups from me. So it's going to take a lot of back and forth design requirements.
Say we have a PUD and they have to do what's in the book. And we've also said that they're going to have a lot of changes made. How does that work?
Well, and that's a good question. The zoning ordinance does give the planning director the ability to make what are called non-substantial deviations. For instance, if the road network's really not changing and they're losing a handful of lots, I could probably approve that administratively. We ran into that situation with Smith Farms up on Blackman Road, a plan development that was approved, oh Lord, a year or so ago. They ended up losing several lots because of some design issues and things. And I was able to look at that and approve that administratively because they really weren't substantially changing the layout of the subdivision. Now, let's, for the sake of argument, say, after hearing Jason's comments from CUD, they go back through here and they look at some of these septic soils and determine, well, we're going to need more soils to do what we want to do, and they start changing road layouts and different things like that. To me, that's something that's going to have to be brought back through. We're going to see a situation like that with Rucker Landing, which is another development on Rucker Road that was approved a couple years ago. Due to the soils in that area, they're losing a good amount of their lots, but they're also reconfiguring the subdivision. That's going to have to be brought back through. So in the event that I look at that and based on the criteria, and it's spelled out in the ordinance what I can and can't approve, if it's something I can approve, we can handle that administratively. I'll just alert you to that whenever we see the preliminary plan. If it's something I don't feel I can approve administratively, then we'll be back before you for that. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's not going to, right. I wouldn't even want them to submit a preliminary plan until they have that figured out. So, I mean, they have a month in between now and the rezoning hearing at the Board of Commissioners in January. They might be able to do a little bit between now and then, but even if it's approved there, they still don't have all the answers. They're going to have that figured out, in my opinion, before preliminary plan's ever submitted.
I have a comment or question really for Mike. A lot of the citizens have come here and they've heard us talk about this, and we're familiar with a lot of the lingo and things and the processes that we've talked about tonight. Can you sort of, just for their benefit, since they have taken the time to be here tonight, will you walk through just the engineering process of what happens from a time a plan like this would be approved to all the examination that is involved through your office for reassurances that this is engineered properly so that they will not be negatively impacted specifically by the drainage? And then after we vote, I'd like for, if Superintendent Brooks is still here, I'd like to talk about Polk Road before they leave as well.
Don't know if Superintendent Brooks is here anymore. It's past his bedtime, I think. But no, typically what we see, we go through the rezoning process if it is a PUD, and then we'll see a preliminary plan with the lot and road layout, a little more detail than what you're seeing on the screen here. And then the next step, each section of the subdivision will have its own separate construction plans. And with those construction plans, we'll see drainage and stormwater calculations. So they have to prove to us, typically we look at the rate of runoff. Before, this is a large field. Most of it, it collects in areas, but it soaks in. If you add a lot of impervious areas, roads, rooftops, driveways and whatnot, that area is gone. It can't soak in anymore. It's got to be collected, and we've got to meter that runoff so it doesn't impact the neighbors. But in this case, we've got a volume-sensitive area. We don't have the creeks and rivers and streams that allow the water to drain away. So what we'll have to do is look at volume calculations. Same situation, you go from a grass field to a subdivision with a lot of impervious area, that water's not going to soak in. We've got to collect that volume of water, and we've got to manage it. And we have to have detailed studies, so that water's going to collect in an area that doesn't have the benefit of a creek or stream to drain to. So we've got to look at the volume. I mean, what we capture before, what we capture after, and those water surface elevations. Are they going to rise up? We're not going to allow them to rise up because that could impact the surrounding neighbors. So, and then, there's a lot of push and pull back and forth. Yeah, we'll just dig a hole to China. Well, that's not always going to work because the groundwater is going to fill that up and you lose that volume. So there's certain back and forth that we'll have to work with the design team. So that's what I do on a daily basis is we review the construction. We oversee construction of new subdivisions, and that's reviewing plans and drainage calculations. So we don't allow this subdivision to start construction until our staff is satisfied that it meets our regulations. It's not going to impact the neighbors. Then when they finally, prove to us that it meets our standards, we'll hold a pre-construction meeting and meet with the contractor, the developer, his erosion prevention, sediment control people, and then we'll go through the whole set of plans and review it, and then we'll allow them to start construction. So it's a long iterative process that we go through. During the construction period, once they're finished, they'll generate what's called as-built record drawings. They'll essentially come back out and survey what they've constructed, and that shows to us that they have built what they said they were going to, and we have their engineers evaluate the ponds and say, yes, these ponds, as constructed, meet our design criteria and meets the county's criteria. So, and then once we get all this, and I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but we go through, we can start releasing lots for home construction.
And you do all this not just on...
And after a final plat, I'm sorry, I missed Doug's step there.
And you do all this not just on paper, you do this in the field as well, field examination?
Yes, we have 3 construction inspectors, 1 stormwater inspector, 3 engineers, me and 2 other engineers that we are constantly reviewing what's on paper, what's in the field. I mean, we're always on site looking at stuff, making sure it's done properly. So.
And because of the FEMA flood grant property that you mentioned earlier, you are intimately familiar with flooding in this area, correct?
Yes, yes. And like I said, that's this on heavy rain days. I know I'm going to get calls from this area, you know, and a lot of these are older subdivisions without the benefit of the technology we have today. Yes, ma'am.
Other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to approve 19-A024 for Cliff Smith. All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Opposition? Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Let me, before you guys leave, let me thank you for your patience and your attendance tonight. Your input is helpful to this commission and to this county. Let me also say that this will also go before the full county commission, as we said earlier, on January the 16th. That's a Thursday evening, and I think it will start somewhere around 6:30 on the 16th of January. It'll be right here, and the full county commission will make the final decision on this piece of property. The recommendation that this body will make before that county commission is to approve the request, but the county commission will make the final decision. But once again, thank you for your time and your attendance, and especially your input tonight. Doug?
Yes, sir. Under staff reports and other business, consistent with our bylaws, we need to appoint a nominating committee for Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair for the 2020 calendar year. We reached out to Chip Pinion, Charlotte P., and Jim Averwater. Chip's not here tonight, so even if he said no, there's no way he could turn it down now. But no, all 3 have indicated a willingness to serve. What will happen is after they're appointed at the day meeting in January, they will make their report as who they recommend. At that time, we can also take other nominations from the floor. So we just need a motion to that effect.
Motion to approve the nominating committee. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye. Opposition? The motion to approve carries. Thank you. Marvin and Charlotte? No. Who seconded the motion? Who seconded the motion? Thank you.
Don't have any other staff reports. I just want to say, I know we've had another eventful and busy year. I just want to say thank you to you all. I know I speak for Mike and myself and the rest of our staff, just to say how much we do appreciate working with you all. It truly is a blessing to have a commission that works as well together as we do, and we're very thankful for that, and I'm very thankful for all of you. And I hope everybody here has a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you after the first of the year, and we'll see what big projects we can get into next year.
Our next meeting is scheduled for the 13th of January. That'll be a 6 p.m. meeting here in the courthouse, and I also would like to thank you for all of your input this year, all of the training hours that you put in, and it continues to be a pleasure to work with a professional group like you. And Doug, that goes for your staff too. Thank you very much. Anything else? We are adjourned.